something, Boban. Is it enough for you to take every man's woman?
Good morning.
You wanted the best. You've got the best.
Pal.
Welcome in, buddy. The Rob Brown Show is on your radio. It's the Fan Upstate. It is Monday, and we are back.
You stay classy.
Always are, always shall be, always will be, forever and always. Amen. It's the Rob Brown Show. I am Rob Brown. That guy over there, the best in the world, the great one Lonzo, in charge of this and every radio program you've ever liked on planet Earth. And we are, as always,
the best in the world got chopped so hard he cried.
That was, you say whatever the hell you want. That was hilarious. That was objectively hilarious. I got to tell you, this is not where I intended to start. That's okay. House shows are the best thing in sports entertainment. How am I getting Gunther v. Punk, Gunther v. Styles, Gunther v. everybody? But I got Gunther and Mr. Can't Hit My Finisher. I want to be a Jey Uso fan. I really do. I really do. I'm still ting all over the radio, but like. Man, I hope he puts it together between here and WrestleMania. We'll find out. We are on the road to WrestleMania. I got to make our sign today, great one. We got to hang a sign so that we can point at it repeatedly throughout the course of the show. I guess I could technically, for like another week and a half, point at the March Madness sign.
You could.
You know?
You could do that.
This is March. That felt good, actually. Now I kind of get it now. Pointing at a sign feels good. 4 hours of the most electrifying sports talk entertainment you're going to find anywhere on the radio starts right this very second, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to have you. Again, I am Rob Brown. He's Lonzo. What do you want to talk about, Upstate? What do you want to get to this AM? College basketball is the best. It's just the best thing, man. The last 5 days have been spectacular. I love it so much. I love it so much. It's the absolute best. We have got, apparently, sorry, when I get in the AM, when I get in the morning, there's like a process, right? Like step one is I write the sports flash. And then step two is I make sure there was no big time breaking news overnight that I have to get to immediately out of the gate. And then step three is I move all my audio into the audio folder so that I have sound clips to play for you guys throughout the day. And then step three is I go and I clean up the outline of the show. I don't know why we never use it. We just get to whatever you guys want to get to whenever you guys want to get to it. But I clean up the outline for the show to then ignore for 4 hours. And then step five is I come in here to the studio. I set up the live stream. I open the text line. I get my little battle station ready. I make sure that there's nothing Lonzo needs from me, nothing I need from Lonzo, yada, yada, yada. That's the process. And the last thing I do before we come on the air, great one, is I skip through and around the text messages from the last couple of days because, you know, maybe somebody said something on Wire to Wire that I want to address, or maybe somebody texted something in a drunken stupor over the weekend that they didn't know they were texting the wrong people or whatever. There's all these different things that are good reasons to check the text line. It's the last thing I do before we go on the air. And so I popped open the text line right after I went and looked at the bracket. By the way, the bracket that mysteriously appeared in the middle of the show on Friday, you will remember that Rob Brown was T2 at 6 a.m. on Friday after a killer first round of selections. And then 1 hour later, somehow I got bumped down to T3, and a mysterious mystery bracket appeared at the top of the bracket standings, the bracket competition standings. And it kind of threw me off because I'm like, whoa, this is a late entry. This is weird. This is a late entry. That late entry, Lonzo, is now still at the top of the leaderboard. That late entry has now changed its name for a third time, and I do respect it this time. The name change is now to the Ray Memorial Bracket. And I got to say, first off, that's a very good name change. I respect that name change. But here's the other interesting part. The other interesting part is since that bracket got added late to the matchup, somehow, I don't know how, I still haven't figured it out. That bracket is still in first place with 560 points out of an available, I believe, like 580 or 600. I don't know. I don't know how math works. I don't know how numbers work. But the bracket at the top of the leaderboard right now is in the top 99.9 percentiles. Or I guess I should say it's inside of the top 0.01 percentile of brackets overall. So that bracket is just whooping ass right now.
By the way, number 2, also in the 99.9%, and also a Rob Brown show.
10 points back. I got this. TRBS is up there. Now, I will say this. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is the gap between first place and T6 is a full 40 points. The better news is this. As we get deeper into these brackets, the points become more, like each game becomes more valuable. So if you're hanging out in like T42nd right now, don't worry, because if your final 4 is intact still, and a couple of these brackets up top maybe got a little wishy with the brackets with the final 4 picks, there's still a lot of movement that can be made. And then if your national champion is still alive, you got a real good chance, because remember, each round, the point value per game goes up. If you pick the national champion correctly, you're getting like 600 some odd points just out of that one game. So the last 3 games, the 2 Final Four games in the Natty, are going to really separate everybody. But as it stands right now, the top 2 spots in the group are TRBS brackets. Now, I do have to say this. I did notice something, and I don't know if he's going to show up today, but, and I want to give him credit. I want to say that there's something more to this, okay? But Lonzo, we may have, and I'm going to let him show up and answer for himself, all right? So I'm going to say this is a question mark. I'm going to let him show, and now I got to go back to the text line because I'm reading the tweet again about that, what started this whole conversation. But you'll remember, we had our boy Brian in the chat, Brian Pettit, who showed up in the chat, was an Armada captain.
Oh, you mean Atolo?
Yeah. So his bracket started with TRBS on the end, and now T6. All of a sudden, it says Brian Pettit Tolos. He changed from the TRBS to the Tolos, and he did so mid-tournament bracket challenge competition. And I again, he's not in the chat yet. He shows up every day. He's a P1, or at least I thought I had granted him captaincy in the Armada. I thought he was a captain in the Armada, right? Like everybody else has got P1s. If you're in the Armada, you can be elevated to the rank of captain under the commodoreship of me here in the Armada. And I thought Brian was one of us, but I don't know if I said something or tweeted something or what, but all of a sudden, our boy Brian went from Brian Pettit TRBS to Brian Pettit Tolos on his bracket, and he was a dude I was leaning on as a heavy hitter, T6, which right now is 5th place at 520 points. So we have a bit of a controversy on our hand here. Do we have a turncoat in the mist? Brian, I'm going to need you to show up. I need to know what's going on here, buddy. I really do. I am currently right now T26, which in the bracket ranking is really like being in 6th place, because we have a stack of people at T8, including Chris Warren's number 1 TRBS. We have a stack of people at number 11, including Armada Elitist TRBS and Logan TRBS and Joey B. Joey B came on an absolute surge last night. Jumped from like T38 to T16, just like that. We got a bunch of people stacked up at 16, including Waffle House Luke TRBS, and then it jumps all the way down to T26, which is where you find yours truly at 480. So the bracket competition right now, again, I watched the guy yesterday and Joey B jump from like T32 to 8 or whatever he is now. That's a huge push. Lonzo was down towards the bottom. Now he is on a resurgence.
By the way, I was never towards the bottom. I've always been in the middle.
I'm trying to make it dramatic, man.
Yeah, but
we do drama here.
I just want you to be accurate. I was never towards the bottom ever, not even close. I was always at least in third place. I went past Cole at one point. Diesel was never in the mix, and now I can't find him. And listen, I'm older. I don't see as well as I used to, and there's a good shot. Maybe I'm just missing it, or he changed his name. But I'm thinking he dropped out, because you can drop out of the bracket. I just looked.
You can. There is a remove my bracket button. So if you were getting embarrassed, you can do that.
Dude, that would be bad if he removed his bracket. I mean,
I don't think Diesel's not a quitter.
I mean, come on,
Diesel's not a quitter.
That's not a good look.
He wouldn't do that. He's not a quitter.
I mean, lose graciously. So I'm sitting at 55. My final four is still intact, so I'm good. We got a lot of traffic up at the top of the leaderboard and a lot of basketball left to go. Cole Bryson right now T33, so he's hanging out down there with a couple of you guys, including. Let's see, who are some of the TRs there? Oh, the wife has fallen off a little bit. She's not happy. She's down to T49 now. She was talking about it last night. She's not thrilled about it. So there's a lot of basketball separating us from the end of this competition. But here's my favorite part. On Friday, I was listening to Friday. I was listening to Friday's show. And Cole and Diesel on Wire to Wire were lamenting a little bit of their bracket competition. They were lamenting their positioning. Now, again, it was like middle of day 2. Like there's plenty of room from here to the end of this thing. There's a lot to do left. But Cole and Diesel were lamenting their positioning, and they very briefly mentioned that, and this was mid-Tuesday afternoon. Mid-Tuesday afternoon, Rob Brown was still T2, T3, hanging out up towards the top of the board. And Dewey, who you will know as the Doc Ock of this show, like he is the arch nemesis of Rob and Zoe. He hates us quite a bit. He doesn't hate me. He just hates you.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
He texts the show. He texts the station multiple times a day, calling for the employment termination of yours truly. Text the show, text the station multiple times a day. He is working on getting hashtag Fire Rob Brown trending, which, don't get me wrong, hilarious. He texted the show 2 days ago, right after Diesel and Cole pointed out that, and again, I've dropped off a little bit, but that Rob Brown had an incredible opening 2 days of bracket selection, saying, quote, both of y'all should be suspended for your poor performances. Hashtag suspend Cole and Diesel. So you got a hashtag Fire Rob Brown and now a hashtag suspend Cole and Diesel. Spectacular drama here in the bracket competition. It's untouchable. All right.
Don't do that. Then I'm back to just me here again.
Oh,
which is how this place started with just me. And let's not do that.
Our buddy Mike in the chat just showed up and said that he is, I got this TRBS, a.k.a. number 2 in the bracket competition right now, just 10 points off the lead of the Ray Memorial bracket, which is currently first. Mike right now inside of the top 0.01 brackets and that's within the overall bracket competition. So well done. All right. We have got a lot that we need to get to on the radio competition today. I don't know why I'm calling it a radio competition. I guess it is. Everything's competition with me and Lonzo. I don't know what to tell you. On the radio competition today, obviously, we are going to update you on the March Madness tournament as we are now into the Sweet 16 after a spectacular group of round of 32 games over the weekend. We're going to get into that. I want to talk about Dan Hurley for a few minutes because I was, after UConn's loss to Florida, which I've got Florida in the final, in the Final Four, so that's a good spot for me. After the round of 32 loss to Florida, Dan Hurley had a moment when he was leaving the court where he passed the Baylor basketball team who was on their way out to the floor to take on the Duke Blue Devils. And he had a comment to the Baylor team about the officiating in his game, the UConn game, the loss to the Florida Gators. And when I heard that comment, I was like, Come on, dog. Come on, bro. Be better, right? Like, be better. And I'll play the comment for you later, and it's edited and censored format, and it needed censoring. But I said, come on, bro. Like, relax, right? Like, your team stunk down the stretch. Your team didn't hit a field goal for like 4 minutes, allowing Florida to jump back up and take back over. And are we blaming it on the right? I mean, I do think there were some calls that were a little bit spotty, but at the same time, your boys were just like missing open mid-rangers. That's not going to get it. But then over the weekend, on Sunday night, last night, after I got done working the hockey game, I got back home. I was like sitting around watching the games last night, the late games. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized Dan Hurley is doing something that I have asked college coaches and NFL coaches to do for a very long time. And I think there's something interesting in that. And I'm in a weird spot because, like, I kind of like Dan Hurley, even though he's doing a bunch of stuff that I know is, like, real bad. I'm still like, he's kind of my anti-hero. He's kind of my Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's kind of my Deadpool right now. And I want to talk about that because I think Dan Hurley over the weekend has kind of, not over the weekend, over the course of this season, culminating in the weekend, has kind of become the most interesting man in sports. And I want to talk about that. We'll also talk a little NFL. Aaron Rodgers spent some time with the Pittsburgh Steelers over the weekend, spent 6 hours with the coaching staff in their facility over the weekend. Want to get into what that might mean, if anything, and more importantly, ask a genuine, sincere question. Do any of you care? Are any of you following the Aaron Rodgers story right now? Because there's really 2 spots left for him to play, Pittsburgh and New York. And neither one of those teams has really been a factor in the NFL in a hot minute now. So do we care? I'm going to talk about that coming up later on in the show. We got to get some NASCAR in here as we had a phenomenal race at Homestead, Miami. Yesterday, Kyle Larson picks up the dub, his second on that racetrack, and the 30th of his career. We'll talk some NASCAR. We got to talk a little NBA and NHL hockey as the playoffs are just around the corner and the drama in the seeding race has started to pick up. We got to get some baseball because, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you know, but if you don't know, well, now you know, playa. Thursday is opening day. It's been so long. We have been waiting, anticipating, and finally it's here, which means we are just days and days away from the very first panic meter of the Atlanta Braves. Opening day baseball, just days away. We're talking about it all because this, my dudes and dudettes, this is a sports show about all the sports. So let's get into all the sports on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. All right, guys, stay right there. I got a live read right out of the gate. We're coming right back. Please don't go anywhere. Good morning. What is up? I've never received a text that I like more than, Rob, you make Mondays suck more. That might be the best text I've gotten in 5 years of doing this show. You make Mondays suck more. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Rob Brown Show is on your radio. It's the Fan Upstate. Rob the Great Malonzo and you, 844-326-3663. That is the number to the Hub City Spartanburgers text line, 844-326-3663, a number that you can text and tell me how much I suck at my job. 844-326-3663. That is also the number that you can call and get on the air if you want to come at us in that direction. 844-326-3663. So, my dear friends, shall we talk a little bit about our bracket? Our Sweet 16 is not our brackets because here's what you're going to learn. The only people who care about your bracket are the people you were competing with in a bracket competition. But we can talk about college basketball because we do have a few days off. The Sweet 16 on the 27th and the 28th. Here is what we know after 4 consecutive days of wall-to-wall college basketball. By the way, so I came up with this over the weekend. I don't think anywhere on the sports calendar there is a better consecutive 4 days of sports unless you are a golf fan, in which case it's the Masters. But if you're not a golf fan, or if you're not a Masters guy, there is not a better 4 consecutive days of sports anywhere on the calendar than the opening 2 rounds of the March Madness tournament.
All right, this is not me being contrarian, but I disagree.
What 4 consecutive days are better?
It's when the NFL, college football, and high school football all are going at the same time, which is within like 3 weeks, where you have football on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. And most of the day on Saturday and Sunday.
I am going to.
I'm talking about the king here. I don't know.
No, I agree with that.
I don't know what levels you're talking about, but they're below the king.
No.
Football is king.
Hear me out here, because I understand that. Daddy ain't dumb. Mama didn't raise no fool. Football is king. Here's the argument I'm going to make, though. While basketball is, I would say, fair or foul to say basketball is America's second favorite sport.
Yeah, but college basketball is only cared about in March.
Okay, all right. I don't disagree.
And if there was no tournament, it wouldn't be cared about.
I'm not disagreeing with any of
all.
that. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. Now, I understand that I am in a unique group. I'm the guy who's watching college basketball in December, in late November. I'm paying attention to basketball camps the way a lot of y'all pay attention to football camp. I love college basketball. I think it's a great game. But I also understand its hierarchy. I understand that basketball becomes important to the people who are talking about in March, in February, when we're closing in on conference tournaments. That's when people get excited. But even if that is the case, which it is, even if that is the case, everybody cares about March. Everybody, even if it's for their own selfish reasons, even if it's only because of the bracket competition, it's only because they get to talk a bunch of bleep to their friends and families and coworkers, if only because, as Cody Decker has said multiple times, they get to, even though they're not, pretend they're an expert. There is nothing Americans love more than pretending they are an expert on something. Sincerely, go down to the bar tonight and just say any sentence about the economy, and you will have everyone in that bar with a very in-depth opinion on the economy, and about 0 people in there that have any sort of formal education on how the economy works. A lot of people got opinions. Very few people actually understand. And I'm not saying I do, because I don't. I'm a big dummy. All right? But I also don't sit around and go, well, if this was to that and that was to this. Like, I got a pretty basic like low-level college understanding of the economy. I don't pretend to sit here and know how every decision impacts everything. It's not that serious when we're talking college basketball. Decker on Saturday had a great point. He's like, look, you know why we love March? Because everybody gets to pretend they're an expert. Even if it's only for 2 days and their bracket gets busted, everybody gets to pretend. And I think that's great. But the fact that everybody is invested and involved, again, there is very little that we can do on this station that in 3 days of hype, we can get 200 plus people invested in. All right? It's not a thing. It's very little we can do to get 200 plus people invested in something. And in total, between all the brackets we have going on, and I'm talking primarily, obviously, about our on-air bracket competition, but I'm talking about station bracket competitions and all the other. I've got directly connected to me, between the station, between the places that I work, between friends and family, I am in bracket competitions with well north of probably 500 people. There's nothing in my life I can do to get 500 people locked in, invested into one thing. And so even if it's only for the first 2 rounds, right? The first 4 days, the first 2 rounds, everybody's locked in. And it starts at 12:15 in the morning and it goes till midnight at night. Now, I'm going to say this, and it's going to get me in trouble, and that's okay. I'm willing to take the heat because I'm right. The people who care about high school football, and I have a respect for that passion and that love. I do like high school football. But here's the reality about it. The number of people who go out of their way for high school football is very small. I'm not talking about people who like it or people who maybe go to a game. I'm talking about people who are like, I'm a high school football fan. There's just, it doesn't make up a significant portion of the audience. It just doesn't. It never has. I've been doing this 17 years. It doesn't make up a significant portion of the audience. So,
but we talk about it more than we do college basketball before March.
And I think that's foolish. Respectfully, I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but I think it's foolish. But that's just my opinion, man. And even still, I would go one step further and say, if we do, it's just barely. It's on Fridays. It's on Fridays, and that's it. You're rarely going to tune in, with a few exceptions, and hear segments about it. So, I think, even with that, let's say that's all true. At the end of the day, you might talk about it more in football than we do college basketball in December. That's not true. You know when you don't talk about it more? The week leading up to and the first 4 days of March. It dominates the radio landscape. Tune into every show on this network for the rest of the day, and I guarantee you every single one of them is going to do 3+ segments on college basketball. We're going to, because everybody's tuned in to the tournament. And people will drop off as the tournament goes through to the Natty. But once people are invested in the bracket, like half the people are going to fall out as soon as their bracket gets busted. Anybody who has a champ alive is going to stay invested all the way through. So people are locked into the tournament, even if it's only for 4 days. People are locked. The nation is locked into this. That's why the NCAA March Madness bracket tournament is the second most money-generating revenue event in college sports, behind only the playoffs. With March, it's all the intensity of the playoffs with way more people invested, and I'm only talking about the first 4 days. I'm not talking about 3 days from now when the Sweet 16 fires up, or a week from now when the Elite Eight and the Final Four go. I'm talking about the first 4 days. The first 4 days, you cannot go anywhere, listen or watch anything, or speak to anyone without the March Madness tournament being a part of the conversation. If you travel in a sports circle. I was at a hockey game yesterday. The Greenville Swamp Rabbits were playing. I obviously am the in-arena MC for that team. I was in the tunnel. We're in the second period. One of the guys, I'm not going to out him so he didn't get in trouble, but one of the guys who works for the team in the game walks up to me and he goes, Rob Brown, how's your Final Four? First question he asked me. I haven't seen this cat in 2 weeks. Rob Brown, how's your Final Four? Like, that's it. Middle of the game. That's what This tournament does. The first 4 days of the March Madness tournament are the best consecutive 4 days on the calendar, because the reality is, while those of you that are passionate about high school football are passionate about high school football, it's a fraction of our audience. College football is obviously king. Well, college football is the prince, the NFL is the king. That's just what the ratings say. But on college football Saturday, in any given time slot, at most, there's 2, maybe 3 games that matter. On Saturday or on Thursday and Friday last week, we were all watching 3 to 5 games every moment because they all mattered. And that was true on Friday, and it was true on Saturday, and it was true on Sunday. That's not true about football even in the overlap season. It's just not. There's any given time slot at maximum 2 games that have an impact on everybody. Everybody's in a bracket competition. So I got to tell you, on one hand, I'm very excited because I really like this Sweet 16. Arizona is through. Auburn, Michigan is through. Ole Miss. How about Ole Miss? How about Chris Beard? A team I said the whole time, I'm like, this defense is going to be good. And defense wins championships in NCAA basketball. Chris Beard's defense is through. Florida with a sweaty win over UConn. Maryland with a sweaty goal winner at the buzzer to get by Colorado State. It was phenomenal yesterday. So we're going to talk more college basketball as the show rolls on. By the way, McNeese getting hammered by Purdue in round 2. I can't make Clemson fans feel good. That's a Final Four team for me. They are on to the Sweet 16. We're talking basketball. We're going to get into NASCAR. We're going to get into baseball. Yeah, we're going to get into football, basketball, and hockey and soccer later in the show, too. Don't go anywhere. We are busy, stacked up. Let's rock and roll on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
Well, I mean, the guy said he was a doctor. Take that, stream. Figure out what the heck we were talking about. Go for it.
Talking college basketball here in hour number 1 of the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate, the show that makes Mondays suck more. Rob Lonzo and you. 844-326-3663 is the number to the Hub City Spartanburgers text line. It's also the number to call in and be on the air with us this AM if you have thoughts on the tournament so far. Let's get into some of the round of 32 games that were the most interesting to me. One of them was Duke Baylor. Those of you that have picked the Blue Devils, you got to be riding high right now, because I got to tell you, I thought the Baylor Bears would give a little bit more of a game. Now, I do have to say, slow your roll a little bit here, Rob Brown, because Baylor is a 20-win basketball team. Like, I don't want to sit here and pretend like Baylor was one of the best in the country, but I really did think Baylor's guard play would give Duke a little bit more of an issue, and it just did not. Duke was up 17 at the half, and they never let Baylor put their foot back in the door to drive back into this thing. Duke right now looks, I don't want to say unstoppable, but like, they look real good. And coming out of that bracket, they have Arizona left ahead of them. And I do think that I want to feel the same way about the Arizona game as I did about the Baylor game before it fired up. They got a cat up front that I really like in Caleb Love. Caleb Love, a 6'4", 205-pound guard slash forward who's averaging 17 a game. The kid can play, but the way Duke is playing around Cooper Flagg. And again, we had questions about Cooper Flagg, right? Like, guy's ankle's busted up. We didn't even know if he was going to play in the opening round. And if he did come back for round 2, would it be the same guy? Turns out, yeah, by a lot. Like, by a lot. Cooper Flagg in this game, 18 points, 9 boards, 6 assists, and a block in 29 minutes of play. He didn't even have to go the full 40 or anywhere close to it. Gave 29 minutes. There were, I think, 2 Duke players that had more PT in this 89-66 win over the Baylor Bears than Cooper Flagg did. But when Cooper Flagg was on the floor, Duke looked like the team that I was sold they are. I got to tell you, I was not sold on Duke being a dominant force coming into this. Good team, without a doubt. John Shire is growing on me a lot as a coach. Like, a lot. I kind of thought this was, I don't want to say it was a nepotism hire when John Shire showed up, but I kind of thought it was a little bit, right? He's a Coach K guy. He's a Dookie. I kind of thought it was a bit of a nepo hire. But this guy is growing on me a lot. And on top of that, there's some other stories that came out of this. There were some other storylines that had to be discussed here. One of them is Jeremy Roach, the backup point guard who was really, honestly, probably should be a starter for Baylor. He was a Dookie. And the Blue Devils kind of got to a spot where they didn't really have a spot for him. He goes over to Baylor. This dude early in the game put Cooper Flagg on skates, got to the bucket, hit a little spinning reverse layup, and he turned around and he gave Cooper Flagg a little love tap on the chest, man. Kind of hit him with the, like, you remember me, right, big fella? You remember me, right, big dog? And it was like, it felt to me like this was a sign of respect, right? This was a, like, what's up, big fella? How you doing? Good to see you. Miss you, love you. Happy to share the hardwood with you again. It felt like it was meant to be like a sign of respect. And I saw that and I was like, is that the guy? Is that the guy you want to wake up? Now, in fairness, it's not like Cooper Flagg burned up the strings, right? 5 of 11, 1 of 4 from deep, 7 of 9 from the arc, but he did have 9 boards and 6 assists. And I think that's what's so interesting about Cooper Flagg's game. I think that's why I like Cooper Flagg's game. He reminds me, I don't know how to put this great one, he reminds me of a Nikola Jokic who cares, right? And don't get me wrong, I think Nikola Jokic cares. I just think he cares about winning and making money, not much else, right? Like, Nikola Jokic isn't a guy who, like, bleeds basketball. He's just so damn good because he wants to win. He wants to win, and then he wants to go home.
It's good. It's good. The job is done. We can go home now.
Like, that's it. And I for the record, I know that this is to the chagrin of many of you. I don't care if an athlete has that mentality if that athlete wins, right? Like, you can bust up on them all. It's not the mama mentality. Cool, but, like, Nikola Jokic has won 2 of the last 3 MVPs. He should have won all 3 of them. And while I do think SGA is going to take it this year, he is the second place guy for MVP number 4 out of the last 4. There's something to be said for that. Cooper Flagg's got that kind of play style. Like, he can play on the block. He can play on the elbow. You can put him up top and he can play there. He can bully ball with the best of them down low, or he can work you with the ball handling up on top. I like watching this guy play, which is why he can end up with more assists than field goals in a game, and Duke wins by 23 over, again, not a great Baylor team, but certainly a good enough Baylor team. A Baylor team that, had they stacked up with 3 or 4 other teams that are in the Sweet 16, probably would have had a very good chance to get there as well.
Wasn't Cooper Flagg down for a while, so those guys got to play without him and know how to play without him on the court, so they don't need him as much as they did before?
Yeah, but I mean, Cooper...
It gives you a chance to grow as a player and get confidence in yourself and not just count on that one guy.
Yeah, and that was the big question going into game number 1 of the tournament, about whether Cooper Flagg was going to play in the opening round game against Mount St. Mary's or not. The question mark was, are they going to put Cooper out there? And if they do, is he on a minutes restriction? And the answer was, yeah, they did. And yes, he was. 22 minutes in that game. Now, that game was good for Duke because they were up 54-28 at the half, and they were able to get a lot of their back guys some time. They had 5 guys off the bench who played double-digit minutes, including Isaiah Evans and Caleb Foster, who each had 20 minutes in this game. They had an opportunity, and it was partially because they only had to run Coop for 22 minutes in that game, and they were able to get the rest of the guys some time, which is good. That's kind of like, this is kind of what I'm saying about Jon Scheyer, is as far as talent goes, this is with the exception of Cooper Flagg, it's a pretty average Blue Devil team. Like, it's a pretty average Duke team. But Jon Scheyer, to me, has picked up one thing from Mike Krzyzewski. And the one thing he's picked up is this team is very reliant on each other. I was listening to a clip from Coach K, who has entered himself into the podcasting world now. Respect. Coach K was on a pod like 4 days before the NCAA tournament. And the guy who was hosting, and I apologize, I wish I could remember where it was to send you to go listen to it, because it's a great listen, but this was like a week and a half ago. And I don't remember what I had for dinner last night. Mike Krzyzewski was on a pod with a guy, and he said, Coach K, what do you look at when you see a team? What do you think makes a team a championship caliber team? And Mike Krzyzewski said the thing that jumps out above everything else is communication. The thing that jumps out above everything else is communication. If I see a team that's got 5 guys on the hardwood talking to each other, that's a team I'm picking in any given game. If I watch you in the round of 64 and I see Team A up on the top of the bracket that's out there just kind of 5 guys doing their own thing, and yeah, they're playing their role and they're fitting within the offense and the defense and all that, but they're just kind of doing their thing. And then Team B on the bottom of the bracket comes up and that team's yelling and talking and communicating and pointing. He said, and you can tell more than anything else. And I thought that this was I don't know if I necessarily say insightful because I think it's relatively obvious when you think about it. I just think it's one of those things we probably don't think about very often. He said if you look at a team and you see guys pointing, you see guys grabbing shorts and throwing the guy in the other direction, you see a guy walking up and tapping the man in the front of the zone on the butt and saying slide over. You see a guy when the ball dribbles, down into the corner. You see a guy that's sliding down. And you see him calling for help. Hey, slide, slide, slide. When you see that, that's a team that plays good defense. That's a team that communicates. And that's Duke right now, right? Like that's a mentality that Mike Krzyzewski ingrained into Duke for a very long time. And I was on Saturday's show. Our producer on that show, David Dykstra, a.k.a. Double D. So fair or foul, Double D showed up on the stream wearing a Penn State hoodie and a Duke cap. Is that fair or foul? Cody Decker and I were debating that.
Well, here's the thing.
I felt kind of foul.
The guy in Detroit would say that's a problem. I don't care. I've showed up to a restaurant wearing Chiefs slides and wearing an Ohio State jersey. I mean, that's two different things.
But that's two different sports. This man's wearing a college football hoodie and a college football cap. Two different teams. And that's like if you showed up wearing a Kansas City hoodie and a Buccaneers hat. You'd be like, no, dog, you can't do that.
Here's what I think it comes down to is fan how you want to. Don't let others like Rob Brown tell you how to do it.
Fan how you want to. I don't tell people how to fan, man.
Sure does sound like you're trying to do
No.
it. The fact that
No.
we were debating on
Correct.
whether it was okay or not.
Because there is a difference in how you fan and how you dress. I will tell you how to dress. I will help you. All right? I'm here to help. Here are my Dale Earnhardt Sr. T-shirt and flip-flops.
Yeah,
and
I'm trying.
backwards cap.
I'm trying not to say anything about the glasses. All right? I've
They're
been trying
red.
the entire
They
time.
match. They're red.
Yeah, dude. I mean, just go ahead and go with the goatee. If you're trying to look like Tony Stark, just go ahead and go with the goatee. All right? Shave both sides off. We see what you're doing over there. All right?
No, I just look good.
You just go ahead and do it.
I don't tell people how to fan. I do tell people how to dress. And I feel like again, if you walk up in a Carolina hat and a Saints hoodie, I'm gonna be like, no, bro, absolutely not. No. But anyway, put that to the side. The point here, the conversation here is that in the Lonzo, if you rolled up here, I don't know, never mind. Put that aside for a minute. I'll come back to that later.
Arbiter.
It's a big deal. So, the Duke thing. This Duke team has very days gone by vibes of Duke. And even if you hate Duke, and Duke's given us plenty of reasons to hate him. The primary one, and the reason I brought that up was Double D, when he brought it up, Cody Decker was like, bro, not only are you double-lettered, not only are you wearing two different schools, you are wearing two of the most disliked schools in America at the same time. Like, you're stacking hate on hate here. And he goes, wait a minute, why do people hate Duke? And I said, I'll tell you why people hate Duke. They hate Duke because for 100 years, Cameron Indoor Stadium, you're playing 8-on-5. You're playing 5-on-5 plus three guys in stripes.
One person who hates Duke. I mean, unless I should count you into it.
You know two, but I promise you know more than two.
For what reason? Because other people hate it, so you hate them? Or do you legitimately have a reason for hating Duke?
Yes, because I have watched ACC basketball my entire sports fandom, and in Cameron Indoor Stadium, it is 8-on-5. At Cameron Indoor Stadium, every game it is 8-on-5. And on top of that, you add in the arrogance and the obnoxiousness of Duke fans, and it doesn't give me a reason to like
so
it.
I don't know any Duke fans.
That's why you don't like. That's why you don't care.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I can't judge them by the fact that you don't like them.
Okay, I'm telling you, I know a lot of Duke fans, and when it comes to basketball season, they're obnoxious. You know what they are? They're the Dallas Cowboys fans of college basketball.
Can't be.
Well, because they win.
Exactly.
But the attitude's the same. And again, maybe it's justified. Maybe, but the point here is, whether you like them or you don't, this Duke team under John Shire has the same Duke vibes under Mike Krzyzewski. They've got chemistry. It's organic. They talk. They communicate. They're moving around the floor. There's a lot of teams that would have a Cooper flag, and the entire game would be get it to Coop and get the hell out of the way. Get it to Cooper in the middle, and then ISO out and let him be the best. Maryland did it yesterday. Derek Queen goes down and hits a buzzer beater to beat Colorado State. That was their game plan. Get the ball into the hands of the best player on the floor, and then move. And that's not Duke. Duke understands if we play 4 out with flag in the middle, we open up the floor up for that guy. And if we talk and communicate around it, then that's going to make it even easier for Cooper Flagg to dominate. And you saw that in this win over Baylor that was just like they were midway through the second half, and I'm like, damn, Duke's winning an Natty. Honestly, Auburn's not beating this team. Sparty's not beating this team. Purdue's not beating this team. If this team plays this way every single game, they will win the Natty because they've got the best player in the game. They've got the best communication and defense in the game, and their head coach understands how to keep that going. At a point in time where a lot of other head coaches are flaming out right now, John Shire's figured it out, and I like that. All right, speaking of coaches, I want to talk about Dan Hurley later in the game because he has become the most interesting man in the world as far as I am concerned. We'll get into that coming up in a little while. We're going to talk some baseball here very shortly because it is opening week in Major League Baseball. Finally, we'll get some NASCAR, we'll get some NBA, we'll get some NHL, and yes, I am going to gripe about U.S. soccer. And more importantly, guess who just showed up in the chat? Brian Pettit, who threw Brian TRBS in the bracket. Now he's T3 in the bracket, and he changed his name to Brian Tolos. He YOLO'd into being a Tolo after starting repping the Armada with the TRBS on the bracket. I looked this morning, and Brian's got Tolo on the bracket, and now he's in the chat, and he's given a reason we're going to discuss and debate. Because I got to tell you, Brian, you hurt me. You wound me, sir. I got to tell you. I've never done this before.
No, he might be discussing an HR violation, which could be a problem, and may have to bring this up with
Brian.
Could be.
I've never done this in the 3 years that the show has been repping the Armada. I've never rescinded a captaincy before, and you may have your captaincy in the Armada rescinded here in a minute. We're going to talk about that. Rob Brown, the great one, Lonzo. He is the sports flasher of your dreams.
You're welcome. It's a record-setting Sweet 16 as Ole Miss became the 7th Southeastern Conference team to make the third round of the NCAA Basketball Championship Tournament. The conference already set the bar with the most teams included in the tournament with 16. The Atlanta Braves made a pitching move yesterday, sending starter Ian Anderson off to the Angels in return for left-hander Jose Juarez. Anderson carried a 2.65 ERA, but walked 18 through 17 innings this spring and hasn't pitched in the majors since 2022 after undergoing Tommy John surgery in 2023. Kyle Larson picked up his 30th career win on the sprint car circuit at Homestead, Miami, passing Alex Bowman with 6 laps remaining for the win. Larson led just 19 of 267 laps. Soon this afternoon, 3:07 p.m. for Wire to Wire, right here on the Fan. Upstate. All I know is I had to hear someone who used to work here doing the overnights tonight. And then now Rob is becoming the arbiter, telling people what they can wear and what they can't wear. I'm in a twilight zone. I don't like it. Once you put a moniker on the end of your name on these brackets, you pick the side. You can't jump back and forth. I mean, just pick a side and stick with it. If Rob's mad at you, who cares? If Cole and Diesel are mad at you, who cares? Neighbor. So I don't think we should talk about this on the air, but I guess we are. So, Brian, how did they pay you? Because if they paid you in cash to get you to change, then I got a problem with that. As the only representative of HR in the building right now, I got a problem with it. I think someone's here, by the way. You don't have time, but I think someone's here. I mean, you were looking for a battery. You were waiting for Chris to be.
I found it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Saying that because I got a battery and then I forgot. I came in here and didn't switch the battery. This side? Yes. I lost the battery.
Pull it together, man.
It's never together, man. So we gotta have a brief conversation to start the hour. Hour number 2, the Rob Brown Show on your radio. It's the Fan Upstate. Brian is a P1 of the station. And then, of course, we have 2 local shows on the station. We have the Rob Brown Show every morning from 6 to 10 a.m. We have Wire to Wire with Cole and Diesel every afternoon from 3 to 7 p.m. And we have a breakdown of listeners to both shows. Those are our traditional P1s. And then we have the P1s of the Rob Brown Show. We call them lovingly the Armada. We have the P1s of Wire to Wire with Cole and Diesel. They are called the Tolos. Turn on, leave on. So this year, Rob Brown decided at the very last minute to pull a heel move. And instead of doing a Rob Brown Show bracket, I said, we're going to invade Wire to Wire's bracket. We are going to stack the top of the leaderboard with brackets that have TRBS on the name, the Rob Brown Show, so that we can prove to the world that the Armada is first class, that we know ball. And it went well. We got a bunch of TRBS brackets in that Wire to Wire competition right now. In fact, the top 2 brackets in the bracket competition are both TRBS brackets right now. The Ray Memorial bracket and I Got This, which is our buddy Mike. Well, as I paid attention to the bracket competition, going into the bracket competition, our dear friend Brian, who has been with us every single morning, was initially named with the TRBS bracket. And he is currently T6 in the bracket competition, 520 points, just 40 points off of the lead right now. He's right there in the mix. Another TRBS bracket inside of what is effectively the top 5 positions in the bracket competition, except I opened it this morning, and now it's Brian Pettit Tolos. He has changed names, he has changed shows, and he has been telling me now that Cole and Diesel were trying to lure him over, bribe him over, entice him to change his bracket name to the Tolos. And I understand why. Because there's a lot of TRBS brackets up at the top of the leaderboard. And there's a lot of basketball left. It could turn completely on its head, and we may see some Tolos creep up there. We may see even more TRBS brackets make their way to the top of the bracket leaderboard. But Brian has been hanging around at the top of the leaderboard the whole time. He's inside of the top 2% of brackets on ESPN. He's right up there at the very top. And now I'm being told that he is being lured by Cole and Diesel to the dark side. I can only assume because they saw the TRBS bracket stacking up at the top of the leaderboard, and they got a little scared. They got a little nervous. They got a little apprehensive that the Rob Brown Show Armada was going to take over this bracket, as I predicted that we would, because we know ball, baby. And now I find out that perhaps maybe some back alley meetings between Cole and Diesel and Armada members who may be a little bit shaky in their commitment, their dedication, their resiliency, their love of the show. We may have, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of controversy going on here, a little bit of drama going on here, a little mob mentality, and I mean mafia style, going down between the folks hosting in the afternoons and the listeners here in the AM. Oh, we are going to be keeping an eye on this development. And Brian, buddy, you've been with us for 3 years here. I love you. I'm glad you're still tuned in, even if you are ditching the Armada in favor of the Tolos. I feel like I may have to suspend your captaincy from the Armada. I may have to suspend your membership in the Armada, and it may just last until a national champion is crowned, until the nets are cut, until that one shining moment echoes off into our distant memories for the 2025 NCAA basketball championship tournament. But Brian, this is egregious. I am wounded, sir. I feel betrayed, stabbed in the back. I am hurt because of you, and I have never, I was prepared to come in here and go off on the Ray Memorial bracket, a bracket which showed up at the very last minute, a bracket that showed up 1 hour into last Friday's show. After it, I already said, I'm T2. Suddenly, I dropped to T3. This bracket shows up, and not only has showed up, but I believe has missed just one game since Friday morning when they showed up, and now I don't even know who's running the Ray Memorial bracket. I do know Mike is running the bracket in second place. I got this TRBS. I have never changed so quickly. All of a sudden, the Ray Memorial bracket, a bracket I planned on here and giving absolute X-Pac heat to this morning, nuclear heat to this morning. Whoever's running that bracket, a bracket that up until yesterday was named Stop Crying, Liber Rob, which objectively hilarious in my opinion. I am now a huge fan of the Ray Memorial bracket. Our buddy Mike, I'm a big fan. Brian, I say this with the same love and respect that you showed me when you changed your name from Brian Pettit TRBS to Brian Pettit Tolos. I hope your bracket comes crashing down. I hope when I wake up the morning after national championship, I don't know how. I hope you're in last place, buddy. I love you. Thanks for being here. Keep showing up. But that hurts, that wounds, that hurts my heart. I'm just sad on the inside, Brian, because the Armada, we're supposed to be one. We're supposed to be family. We're supposed to, it's like Brian Kelly. We're supposed to be family. And instead I get this betrayal, this departure from the group. Ooh. Benedict Arnold level stuff, man. Benedict Arnold. It hurts. Alas, we shall carry on. We shall push ever forward into the sports conversations of the day, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7:07 in the morning. There's stuff we got to talk about. There's stuff we got to get to, and there are some stories that carry more weight than others when you get to the office this AM. When you start talking sports with your coworkers, these are the 3 stories you'll be talking about. These are the water cooler cheat sheet.
Are you ready for the playbook of the peculiar? The almanac of the absurd and the encyclopedia of the extraordinary? Well, you better be, because we're diving headfirst into the 3 top stories that will have your coworkers saying, even before they take their first bathroom break.
No.
Here we go. Welcome to the water cooler cheat sheet on the Fan Upstate.
When you got nothing, you got nothing. You know? Here's what I want to say to you. Nothing. All right? I'm looking you in the eye at the water cooler. I don't want to say anything to you.
Me personally, or
No. I'm
just making sure.
If I got a problem with you, I'm going to tell you I got a
I
problem
know
with
that.
you.
That's why I was a little.
I had a problem with your glasses, but other than that, it's just too much. It is. It's too much. It's too much.
Top 3 sports stories you need to know before you get to the office this morning and start talking sports with your coworkers. Let's dive right in to item numero uno. You know what? I just realized something. Lonzo, Thursday is going to go down as one of the best sports day we have had in a very long time. Because Thursday, March 27th, is a big day. Because, number one, the Sweet 16 in the College Basketball Championship Tournament kicks off. On Thursday, we will have number 1 seeded Duke taking on Arizona. We'll have number 6 BYU taking on Alabama. On Thursday, we will have number 3 Texas Tech taking on 10 seed Arkansas. On Thursday, we'll have number 1 Florida taking on Maryland. It is going to be a sweet day in college basketball. And, my dear friends, it's also Major League Baseball opening day. 28 of 30 teams will be in action on Thursday. I'm going to go ahead and say right now, don't call me, don't text me, don't tweet me, don't FaceTime me, don't smoke signal me, don't send a carrier pigeon, do nothing, because Rob Brown will be busy from the moment this all starts off until he gets into the building to do the show on Friday morning. I can't wait. However, water cooler cheat sheet item number 1 is that your Sweet 16 is set. Thursday and Friday, we will see the action. Number 1 overall seed Auburn able to get by a game Creighton Blue Jays team. They win 82-70 in the bottom half of that bracket. They will match up in the Sweet 16 with the 5 seed of Michigan. They get by A&M. Man, I thought that Texas A&M gritty physical defense was going to be enough, but at the end of the day, if you can't put the brown thing in the round thing, nothing else matters. 91-79, the Wolverines will move on. In the bottom half of that bracket, a team that did play physical, gritty, hard-nosed defense, the Ole Miss running Rebel, shocking everybody. The 6th seed getting by Iowa State, not just getting by them, but putting a lot of points on the board. 78. They await Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans. New Mexico, the Lobos, gave them a hell of a contest last night, but Sparty able to get away late, 71-63. So Ole Miss, Michigan State in the Sweet 16. Florida had to get sweaty against Dan Hurley's UConn Huskies, but they finish it off in the dying breaths of the game, 77-75. They await now Maryland, who Derek Queen had to hit a buzzer beater to make sure that they did not fall to the Colorado State Rams, 72-71. Maryland on their way to the next level. Texas Tech, not much problem with Drake. Drake, of course, shocked everybody by getting by Mizzou, but just not enough firepower to get by the Red Raiders. So Texas Tech is on, and they will meet. How about the 10 seed John Calipari's Arkansas Razorbacks, still alive? They get by Rick Pitino and the St. John's Red Storm, 75-66. So Arkansas, Texas Tech, that might be my favorite game in the Sweet 16. Texas Tech favored by 5.5 over on the other side of the bracket. Duke gets by Baylor, 89-66. We broke that game down in the last hour. Arizona escapes Oregon late last night, 87-83. Duke and Zona will match up on Thursday. The 6th seed BYU, one of my dark horse picks, 91-89 over the Big Ten's Wisconsin Badgers, and Alabama gets by the St. Mary's Gales with relative ease, 80-66. So BYU, Alabama in the Sweet 16. Houston knocks off Gonzaga, 81-76, and they get my pick to shock everybody, the Purdue Boilermakers, 76-62 winners over McNeese State. So Houston, Purdue on Friday. Kentucky finishes off Illinois 84-75 winners, and we get a 2-3 matchup between SEC teams in the bottom half of that bracket in the Sweet 16 as the UT Volunteers finish off the UCLA Bruins 58-67. Your final in that one. Kentucky, Tennessee on Friday could be a big one as well. There's your Sweet 16 matchups. We'll be breaking those down throughout the week. Let's get to item number 2. We stay in the land of college basketball for this one, and it has to do with the Sweet 16, although it is not about scores. It is about record books. I told you coming into this year, I told you midway through the year, I told you at the end of the year that I believe the Southeastern Conference in basketball this year is the best individual conference in an individual sport in any individual year, maybe in the history of colleges playing in conferences. Well, they kind of pushed that argument forward because the Southeastern Conference has 7 teams inside of the Sweet 16. That is a lot of them. The record belonged to the Atlantic Coast Conference, who had 6 Sweet 16 teams back in 2016. Now it belongs to the SEC. Despite being the lowest-seeded SEC team to reach the Sweet 16 ahead of 10-seed Arkansas, Ole Miss closed it up and set the record with that dub last night. The SEC already had the NCAA tournament record with 14 teams gaining berths in the tournament. If you include Texas in the play-in game, 13. If you don't, still a big number. The league eclipsed the former mark of 11 that belonged to the Big East back in 2011, but that year only 2 Big East schools advanced to the Sweet 16. 14 from the SEC get in. Half of them head to the Sweet 16. That is impressive. Let's get to item number 3. We're going to talk about this later. I'm going to make you all listen to me talk about this later, and the handful of you that are United States of America soccer fans are, I hope, going to be involved in this conversation. Back-to-back defeats, and Mauricio Pochettino, the new manager of the United States men's soccer team, has guided this team to a not medal in the CONCACAF Nations League. Last night, Team USA took on Team Canada in the bronze medal game, and they fell 2-1 in the third-place match in front of about 6 dozen fans out in Inglewood, California, at SoFi Stadium. The U.S. has 1 tournament left. It is the CONCACAF Gold Cup plus 4 international windows before the World Cup. Now, Mauricio is trying to convince us all that, hey, it's no big deal. He says, quote, it's better now because I think we have time. If we will be in the situation in 1 year's time, for sure, I will tell you, Houston, we have a problem, SOS. I respect him getting into the American lingo. That's very nice. But this was an absolute gut punch to those of us that are American soccer fans because it tells me there's a few things missing. Number 1, leadership at the U.S. Soccer Federation ranks. This is what happens when you coddle a bunch of the most privileged soccer players in America. This is what happens when, if you want to be a part of the U.S. program, you've got to be able to afford to play travel ball. I promise you there's a lot of great players out there that can't afford to play travel ball, and therefore they're left out in the dark. And what does it end up doing? It means we send a bunch of coddled baby players who don't have the grit, who don't have the in them to go win matchups like this. Y'all, I promise you, on the list of sports wishes, very few are higher than to see Team USA actually compete in the World Cup next year. Very few of them are higher than actually seeing Team USA represent. I'm not saying win. I'm not even saying medal. I'm just saying show the hell up and show advancement. And I watched about 20 minutes of a game last night that made me turn it off. I had an extra TV. I had 3 basketball games on. I have 4 TVs in the bro cave at any given moment. I had one of them just off. It was just off, just a blank screen, because I'd rather watch the reflection of my overweight, sad, and depressed self in the black mirror that is a blank television than have watched that team last night give absolutely and precisely 0 bleeps. I'm embarrassed, man. Like, I don't know what to say. And I saw people online, what's the problem? What's the problem? What was it, the players? Is it the coaching? Is it the man? It's all of it. It's all of it. It's just it's all of it from top to bottom. We have an administration that gives a damn about nothing more than making money. We have CONCACAF, which does not care, and they shouldn't, about promoting us. But then you have U.S. Soccer, who basically, you know what the tickets were? There were 6 dozen people. The tickets were over $100 to get in that game last night. And on top of that, Mexico was playing in the same stadium on the same day later that night. Mexico sold out an NFL stadium to watch their team play soccer in L.A., not in Mexico, in L.A. Because why would I pay $100 to go watch that team play? It's pathetic. We're going to talk more about that later on in the show because I want to. I am Rob Brown. The great Malonzo's on that side of the glass. Let's have a little fun. The Rob Brown Show carries on after this. It's the Fan Upstate. Oh.
That you were about to
No person.
Okay. Just go on stream. I was just I'm just trying to look out.
I appreciate it. I'm going to step away for 30 seconds, guys. You'll stay right there. accidentally, and then I was like, oh. So then I started using them. Way easier. The Rob Brown Show on your radio. It's the Fan Upstate. I had a take during football season that I now find really interesting when I put it into the prism, into the lens of college basketball. During this past football season, I said the landscape of college football has changed, and you can tell that it has changed because the SEC was good, but it was not, or at least it did not feel like, the dominant force that it felt like in years gone by. And I attributed that to name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal becoming a mainstay. And I said about name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal coming into this year, the thing that intrigued me the most about it was that I thought it was going to increase parity across college football, or at least at the top of it. The smaller schools are still going to struggle, but they always have. I don't think that that is new. I don't think that that has changed. And I think you did see that. You still had most of the dominant football programs across America at the top, but there wasn't like 3 or 4 teams that were just clearly the best. There were 6 or 7 throughout the course of the year. And I do think that over the years, you will see that probably spread out even more. Now, you'll have teams go on runs, but I do think in any given year, you will see more dominant teams consistently towards the top of the standings than we have had in a long time. And again, the take I had was when a new coach shows up at a program, historically, pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, historically, most of us had agreed to you give that coach 3 to 4 years. 3 years to show an upward trajectory, 4 years to show that his culture has been established, that his roster building has been established, that his coaching staff and his mentality within it has been established. And if you put the NIL and the transfer portal on that same timeline, I think what you recognize and realize is that NIL and portal has changed the game. Many of you don't like it. Some of us don't care. Whatever you want to think about it. But it is established. It is ingrained. Teams have responded. There's still plenty more change. We still got the House settlement and these other legislation and litigation issues that have to be handled. But by and large, most teams and coaches have kind of figured out this is how I'm going to navigate this, and I'll tinker with it as we go. And I thought, I don't know that we will have any given year that one conference, and obviously we're talking primarily about the SEC and the Big Ten, will be more dominant than the other. I think we're going to see across the 2 power conferences, and with the occasional pop-up team from the smaller conferences, we'll see a lot more parity across a lot more teams. So how do I explain the Southeastern Conference in basketball this year? How do I explain the Southeastern Conference having what I believe to be the most dominant individual year in any individual sport that any individual conference has had? The answer to me is coaching. Now, I've said that I believe recruiting involves 3 C's: cash, culture, and coach. There are 3 C's to getting kids wanting to come play for your school. Number 1, you just got a boatload of NIL money, and you got enough to pay guys that are depth guys money that they would get as starters playing at other universities. Number 2 is the culture of the school. There are some cultures that stand out. Clemson's culture is one of them. I honestly believe Shane Beamer is building something very similar, different culture, but similar in terms of its impact and importance at South Carolina. I look at Ryan Day at Ohio State. There is definitely a Buckeye culture that is established there, and it is still getting top 10 recruiting classes there. Now, if culture breeds success, the rich get richer. Kids want to play for the programs at the top. But now that there is a little bit more incentive to spread out across college football, culture becomes that much more important. Can I establish a culture where a kid might want to go play there, even if it is going to take them a year or two to be a starter, to break into the starting 11 on either side of the football or the starting 5 in basketball? But I have also maintained for a very long time, of the 3 C's, cash, culture, and coach, the most important is what I always list as the final, coach. I believe that coaching is the most important of the 3 C's. A coach establishes the culture at any given program. A coach impacts how invested boosters and NIL supporters will be. A coach is what gets people excited, and a coach is what turns people off to a program. That's it. It's coaching. That's the most important thing. And so when I look across the Southeastern Conference in basketball right now, I look at John Cal at Arkansas. I look at Nate Oates at Alabama. I look at Bruce Pearl at Auburn, number 1 overall seed. When I look across the SEC, and specifically the teams that are still alive in the Sweet 16, I will tell you what I think the SEC has done. I think they have hoarded the coaches that do the best job at building the culture, at getting people invested and involved, and wanting to be a part of the program from a supportive standpoint. I have been on the Nate Oates bandwagon for 3 years now. I've said when he showed up there, I'm like, I don't really know about this hire. And within 6 months of watching this guy and listening to press conferences and seeing his team play, I look at an Alabama team. I watched an Alabama team play last night that is as good of a team as I have seen in a very long time. When I look at Bruce Pearl at Auburn, for some reason yesterday, as I was watching basketball, scrolling the interwebs last night, my algorithm decided that I wanted to see a bunch of Bruce Pearl clips. Not basketball, but interactions with the Auburn community. And I texted P1 Keegan, Captain Keegan of the Armada, who is our resident Auburn representor. Texted him, and I'm like, dude, in a weird way, like I'm kind of team Bruce Pearl right now. Now Bruce has always been kind of a divisive, a polarizing guy. We've had the pictures of Bruce Pearl shirtless at pool parties that got him into a little heat back in the day. But I look at Bruce Pearl, and I watch the interaction he has with Auburn fans, and I'm like, yeah, I get why they love this guy. And I get why players love this guy. I look at John Cal. John Calipari right now looks like he's having as much fun coaching college basketball as anybody in the country. John Calipari on the sideline, in his post-game press conferences, in his interactions with fans, looks like he's just having a great time. And if you look at the Razorback locker room after they knocked off St. John's, 7.5, 8.5 point upset, a game that none of us, very few of us, had Arkansas picked to win. John Cal's locker room looked like they were having the time of their gosh darn rootin' tootin' lives. They were hype. And when John Cal walked in the room, you'd have thought he was on the damn team the way they were celebrating with that guy. When I look at the Sweet 16 and the teams from the Southeastern Conference that have made it in, like I said, Nate Oates at Alabama, Pope at Kentucky, Rick Barnes at Tennessee. Again, I'm still waiting for the annual Rick Barnes Collapse-a-thon. I honestly thought it might be UCLA. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're going to get it right. When I look at John Cal at Arkansas, when I look at Golden at Florida, I was watching UConn, Florida yesterday, leading up to the Greenville Swamp Rabbit game. I was up in the lounge watching the end of that game, and there was a spot. Florida was up, I think, 2. UConn brings the ball down. They miss. Florida goes the other way. They cherry pick a dunk. They go up 4, 40 seconds left or whatever it was. And the camera turned over to the Gator basketball sideline. It turned over to Todd Golden. And Todd Golden who was watching the play develop on the floor, and he was doing like the classic basketball coach, like bent over, hands on knees, just like really intently watching the game. He springs out of that. He turns to the Florida blue and orange fan base behind him, and he hits like a spinning, almost like a soccer celebration, jumping, spinning in the air fist pump. And he comes down. It was like watching a wrestler win a heavyweight belt, man. Just like hands went up. This dude looked like he was a fan. Like if I would have just showed you the video, and you don't know who Todd Golden and the Florida Gators are, and I just showed you this video, you'd have thought he was like a damn student manager or something. He was so invested in the game, and all of the guys on the sideline started like pushing him and grabbing him by the shoulders, and like he looked like he was, again, a member of the team. Todd Golden at Florida is another perfect example of that. Chris Beard at Ole Miss. Now, Chris Beard's an interesting case study. Chris Beard was let go at Texas because even though they have reconciled, there was a domestic violence incident involving Chris Beard. And Texas said, it's too much, man. We got to let you go. And Ole Miss said, hey, we're the team that believes in second chances, as is always the case with big-time coaches and athletes. And Ole Miss said, we'll bring Chris Beard in. And Chris Beard gets an incredible amount of grit out of his basketball team. Same situation. They've all bought in. I will tell you this right now, and I mean it. There are 3 C's to recruiting: culture, cash, and coaching. And while most of y'all think that cash is the most important thing, and to some players, I'm sure that it is, in terms of the success of a program, and I think SEC basketball this year more than any other year in any other sport in any other conference proves it, a coach who builds a great culture, who gets the fans to invest and support both in terms of during games and financially in the offseason, that will breed success faster than anything else. And I think the fact that there are this many SEC teams, and I know every one of their coaches by first and last name and where they've been in their history because their guys buy in and make them must-see TV, is the absolute living proof of that. Take a break. Back after this on The Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate. Oh, man. I also had Bama beating Duke. I think the guard play works there. But I also thought that Baylor would give them a better game than that because of the same reason. So maybe I just blew it. Possibly. Give me 30 seconds, guys. I'll be right back. I feel like the O'Reilly jingle is like the GOAT jingle.
It is right now. It's lasted longer than a lot of other ones.
That jingle has been on the radio since I was listening to Saints games as a kid. It's short enough that I don't hate it. It's long enough I'll never forget it. Is the O'Reilly jingle just the GOAT jingle in radio history? Like, I feel like it is. That jingle has been on the radio since I was listening to Saints games on the radio as a child. And it's still going. And it's not just still going, but it's I would say in terms of recognizability, in terms of memorability, it's got to be at the top, right? Like, I asked for the O'Reilly jingle. You don't think about it. You just go to it. It's very memorable. You're not going to forget it. It's short enough that it sticks in the brain, but it's long enough that you remember the name. I got to tell you, if you're power ranking all-time radio jingles, I think the O'Reilly jingle is claiming an easy number one. I think the ba-da-ba-ba-ba is like way up there. But remember, that ends with I'm loving it. And while it has obviously become the Golden Arches go-to, at the same time, it doesn't say the company's name in it. And so I'm kind of like, it's a great jingle. It's catchy. It's memorable. But if I just went out in public and I was walking down the street and I was like, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, people may not know the company of the jingle. But if I walk down the street and I hit the oh, I feel like a chorus of people in any given bar are going to drop the O'Reilly on me. It's an all-timer. It's an all-timer. Great one. If I ask for the number one radio jingle of all time, are you putting anything above the O'Reilly?
Here's the problem with it. The fact that I am old. So I do remember a time when there are certain jingles that lasted a really long time and then they went away.
Sure.
So this is one of those in your lifetime things. So in your lifetime, I could see why O'Reilly would be there. But Plop Plop Fizz Fizz was, for me, a very long time, which was Alka-Seltzer. I mean, there were some things back in the day that lasted a really long time back in the day. And we hear these commercials more than probably anybody.
Sure. But, I mean, I think anybody listening to radio has dropped that one. And now, was Plop Plop Fizz Fizz, was that a radio jingle for a hot minute? Because I don't remember that
everywhere.
one on the radio.
It was on TV and it was on radio.
I also think that one died out when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's an age thing.
But here's the thing.
If you want to say currently, O'Reilly's maybe, but I don't think you can say all time.
I remember Plop Plop Fizz Fizz as a kid, but I also remember O'Reilly as a kid, and there's never been a point where O'Reilly's went, hey guys, like maybe the OOO has run its case.
I don't, because I don't think O'Reilly's was around when I was a kid.
I mean, maybe not. But I would say in terms of staying power, I know it's been a jingle for at least 30 years now. Like at least 30 years, and not one point has O'Reilly said, hey, we should freshen it up a little bit. And maybe we should freshen it up. Maybe we should try something new. I don't know. I think it's way up there on the list. All right. We've been talking college basketball on the show today. I gave you a thought there. I'm kind of curious as to what y'all think about my take there. Got a couple of texts and a couple of folks chiming in on the Facebook Live /YouTube /Twitch /Twitter stream. Facebook.com/The Fan Upstate. The Fan Upstate on YouTube. The Fan Upstate on Twitter. The Rob Brown Show on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch. All different ways that you can stream the show live. Every single day, all 4 hours, go behind the scenes with the great one and I. We have conversations off the air during the breaks that sometimes make it on the radio and sometimes they do not. So if you want the full impact of the great one Lonzo in your life, you need to come join us on the live stream. So here's a couple of thoughts that have come in so far. Spartanburg J texts the show, ask a fair question. He said, Rob, your 3 C's, why hasn't Clemson been more successful in basketball? That's from Spartanburg J. I have a couple of thoughts on that, Jay. I'm going to say this, and I think this is
What is successful?
I mean, he's been there 15 years. He has an Elite Eight appearance. I'm going to say, because obviously the answer to that is subjective, but I'm going to say if a coach is at a school for 15 years, like a couple of Final Fours. I'm not even saying a natty, but like a couple of Final Fours. Like get close, right? And he hasn't. So here's my gut instant knee-jerk reaction to that, Jay. My gut instant knee-jerk reaction to that is, and this is probably, not probably, I'm going to say definitively, more true about basketball than it is about football. You still got to have a great player. You still got to have a guy. If I look at the teams that are still alive, Jani Broome at Auburn, Mark Sears at Alabama, like most of them have Cooper Flagg at Duke. The teams that we consider to be national championship caliber teams, Kaufman, Wren, and Braden Smith at Purdue, LJ Cryer at Houston, like all these teams do have an elite level player. Last year, Clemson had a couple of guys that were like on the edge of that conversation, and they made an Elite Eight run, probably the best run that Clemson basketball, definitely the best run Clemson basketball has had since I got here. I understand this year they set the record for most ACC wins in a single season for the school, but as I've said a bunch of times, this was also the worst ACC year I can remember. Like the ACC was just bad this year, and you can see that in the Sweet 16. You have what? One ACC team in the Sweet 16? That's unheard of. It's unheard of. You got Duke in there, and Duke has, again, a standout player. I just don't think Brad's been able to get the talent. Now, why not? I mean, honestly, I don't know. Is Brad Brownell not exciting enough for young players? I don't know. Is Clemson basketball struggling in the NIL front? Not to my understanding. Their NIL program seems to be pretty strong. So I don't know if it's just, I don't know if it doesn't care. And I will acknowledge there's also some level of this of the school's got to care about basketball. And I say this respectfully to the Clemson fan base. I don't think y'all care about basketball. Honestly. Like just my 5 years worth of anecdotal experience living here in the upstate of South Carolina. I don't think Clemson fans care about basketball. I think you jump on the bandwagon when the team is good, and the second that something goes sideways, you jump right back off. Kentucky fans don't do that. Arizona fans don't do that. Duke and Carolina fans don't do that. The second something goes wrong, you guys do not care about college basketball. In fact, last Friday, the day after Clemson gets bounced in the opening round by a 12 seed in McNeese State, I came in here the next morning and I said, hey, Clemson fans, what's the take on your status of your basketball team right now? Now, the day before that, the 2 days before that, the Wednesday and the Thursday, because I was off on vacation that Monday and Tuesday, the 2 days before that, on Wednesday and Thursday, when we were talking about the lead up to the tournament, a 5 seed for the Clemson Tigers. And I asked for your opinion. Hey, how do you feel about the matchup? How do you feel about the breakdown? You know, Will Wade, a couple of years ago, he wanted that Clemson job, and you guys didn't even get on the phone with him, which for the record is very understandable. Will Wade was a subject in an FBI wiretap investigation. That's heat, man. In fact, I asked a dear friend, and I'll say influential Clemson guy, later after that show, I said, hey, let me ask you a question. I'm going to give you the DeLorean, hit you with 88 miles an hour, Back to the Future. 2 years ago, you got an opportunity to get on the horn. Pre-Elite Eight run, you got an opportunity to get on the horn and to bring Will Wade to Clemson coming out of his LSU tenure. Would you do that? And his response was, honestly, even with everything we've seen the last 2 years, no. And I said, why? And he said, I wouldn't have put that much heat on the program. But that's not the Clemson mentality. That's not the Clemson culture. And I'm fine. I'm good with that. I agree. I think hindsight is 20/20. It's very easy this year to say, oh, we made a mistake by not getting Will Wade. But What I would argue is I've got a fan base that even if they're in on the NIL, and even if Clemson takes that NIL and they say, hey, we're gonna dedicate a good chunk of it to Clemson basketball, respectfully, your fan base doesn't care. And I look at let's just look at the rest of the teams in the Sweet 16. Historically, Auburn fans didn't care about Auburn basketball. But over the past 2 years, Bruce Pearl shows up. You got one of the best coaches in America. You're making runs. You're one of the best teams in college basketball for the last 2 seasons. Now the Auburn fans are all in, and watch their recruiting class this year. It's going to be a top 10 class. Chris Beard shows up to Ole Miss. Ole Miss signals with that coaching hire. And remember, Chris Beard, I would argue, Chris Beard probably had as much, if not a little bit more heat on him. Because, yes, Will Wade had an FBI wiretap investigation going. But remember, it was about recruiting violations. Chris Beard had a straight-up domestic violence charge on him. But with that hire, the Ole Miss Running Rebels said, hey, we're serious about basketball now. Alabama went and got Nate Oates. They said, yo, we want a basketball program that matches the football program. And now all of a sudden, Alabama basketball 2 years in a row has been a Final Four favorite in the bracket. The only bad thing they got is they got Duke. If Duke wasn't in this bracket, Alabama would be a clear-cut favorite. And I'm going to tell you right now, I got Alabama shocking Duke and going to the Final Four. I look down at Kentucky and Tennessee. I don't think we need to spend a bunch of time talking about those teams. Those are basketball schools. Maybe Kentucky, basketball school first. Remember, their basketball coach and their football coach damn near got into a fight a couple of years ago about that, right? Clemson fans, respectfully, and I don't know how I feel about South Carolina fans on the men's side yet, right? Like, you guys had a rough year this year, obviously. And it makes sense why. You lost your best player to the NBA. You lost a lot of guys that transferred out. You didn't even have a point guard on this roster. It's a tough season. I'm interested to see how South Carolina men's basketball fans respond to this season. The women's side, no question. You had the worst regular season year in the last 3 or 4, and you're still selling out the arena in Columbia, right? You're still selling out the Colonel. So with that being said, I look at Clemson basketball, and I see a program that last year in an Elite 8 run, the fans were like all on board. They were all there. And then this year, the wins are stacking up in the conference, and the Clemson fans are all in. And then they lose in the opening round of McNeese State. They lose to Will Wade. On Wednesday and Thursday, the 2 days leading up to the first round, I went back and I counted. I was averaging about 9 interactions per show just on Clemson basketball, between phone calls, text, tweets, emails, whatever. I was averaging about 9 interactions a day leading up to that game. On Friday, I come in here. I cracked the mic. You lost to McNeese. I opened the show. I'm like, hey, Clemson fans, how do you feel about your basketball program? Are you optimistic about the future? Do you look at this and go, it was a one-off loss, or do you feel like there's a problem? On Thursday, during the game, I was at a local watering hole. There had to be, and I'm not exaggerating, there had to be 110 Clemson fans there, all decked out in Clemson jerseys, football and basketball. The Alumni Association was there handing out pom-poms and sunglasses with tiger stripes on the arms, all jacked up on Mountain Dew. And a couple of them, because I wore my hockey jersey with my name on the back because I'm an attention you-know-what, a couple of them came up and said, hi, Rob Brown, I'll listen to the show. I said, thanks, man. Great. Call in sometime. I said, yeah, for sure. On Friday, after the loss, I spent the day saying, Clemson fans, how do you feel about your team? How do you feel about your team? How do you feel about Brad? How do you feel about the program? How do you feel about the extension? How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? I got over a 4-hour show, 0 interaction. 0 interaction. None. Not a phone call, not a text. The text number, the Hub City Spartanburger text line, 844-326-3663, is at your disposal. You don't have to interact. You don't have to reply. All I asked for was send me a text with your thoughts on the program. Nada. I bring up Duke's mayonnaise, I get 50 texts. I bring up South Carolina basketball, I get text. I bring up WrestleMania, I get a text. 4 hours. The day after your team got bounced from round 1 of the championship tournament, I got 0 interactions. Not a tweet, not a call, not a text, not a Facebook post, not an email. 0. And so, I have to say, respectfully, if I'm Brad, it's probably hard for me to go out there and talk to the guys that are considering North Carolina and Duke. Now they're considering Tennessee. They're considering Georgia, who was in the tournament this year. They're considering Alabama and Auburn, who are not just in the tournament, but they are Final Four favorites out of their respective brackets. Florida. All these schools surround Clemson. And if I'm Brad, how do I go get the best talent considering all those schools to say yes to Clemson when the second there's adversity and it hits that program, the fan base just disappears? I'm sorry, but that's just, as somebody who is objective and wants to keep it real with you. When UConn loses a game, UConn I promise you, UConn radio airwaves are burning up this morning. They don't disappear. Clemson fans, you guys, you disappeared from the 17 interactions over a couple of days, 0 the day after you lose. How am I going to tell a top-level talent that if they come here, they're going to get the attention that they want and they need? You're not. You can't. You won't. And I think that might be the biggest problem, but that's just my opinion. Man, you want another opinion? Not a single person anywhere in America reads sports flashes like Lonzo does.
Just want to say, I'm on your side, listener. Rob's going after everybody today. I don't know what's going on. It's Monday. It's a record-setting Sweet 16 as Ole Miss became the 7th Southeastern Conference team to make the 3rd round of the NCAA basketball championship tournament. That's a lot from a conference. The conference already set the bar with the most teams included in the tournament with 16. Aaron Rodgers' watch continues with the 41-year-old quarterback visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers over the weekend. Rodgers reportedly spent 6 hours at the facility meeting with the coaching staff, though no agreement was met, according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Rodgers has offers from the Steelers and the Giants, and will make his decision soon, I'm sure. Tune in this afternoon from 3 to 7 p.m. for Wire to Wire. Cole Bryson and Diesel ride shotgun on your drive home, get you up to date on the latest local and national sports news. Great guests, great debate, a whole lot of fun, and it's all Wire to Wire.
follow a subreddit that does pictures of people with crazy facial hair. This guy's mustache just showed up.
Well, that's not that's a full mustache.
That is not a full mustache. That's a whole ass head of hair.
Okay, that's weird.
That's his mustache.
Yeah, I don't know. That's gross.
How do you eat, man?
Yeah, that's the gross part
I
about
have
it.
to lift the
Yeah,
flap.
probably.
Those of you on the stream, we're talking about this cat's mustache. That's wild. That is a whole haircut on that man's upper lip.
All right, I've been looking up jingles, and the BK jingle right now is everywhere.
The which one?
The BK, Burger King.
Oh, at BK.
Yeah. Also, Liberty.
Liberty, liberty, liberty. Liberty, liberty. The Rob Brown Show back on your radio. It's the Fan Upstate. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Rob, I still can't. I looked again. I can't find Diesel. I mean, I don't.
I'm gonna text him.
Yeah,
I'm gonna text him.
because let's see. I mean, because there's no way he pulled his bracket.
Remind
right?
me.
He just changed his name.
He had to. Remind me at the break, and I will shoot the D Train a text to find out. I'll tell him the people want answers. The people need to know. Did you yank your bracket entirely, or did you change its name? I need to know. I got to know, because I also looked and I also didn't see it. I see Cole still. I don't see the D Trains. All right.
Yeah, because Cole, like me, went all caps.
Yeah.
So it just stands out.
Yeah.
But Diesel's was D's knees, and I don't see it. Maybe if someone's listening and you can find it on there, let us know, because it's a chance that maybe we just overlooked it.
Which is possible, because we are trying to do an award-winning radio show here.
Well, I looked for it like 5 or 6 times before the show started, and I've looked a couple times during the break, just thinking maybe there's a chance that I just missed it.
Yeah, I'm looking through it one more time, and I do not see it.
Because I listen, is that the sort of thing we let him live down? If he did that, I mean, I know I personally probably wouldn't, but I mean, as a show and as listeners, do you let him live that down if he pulled his bracket?
I mean, listen, I personally feel like the shame that he would experience would be enough.
I remember a former employee. We were doing the most famous sports people in the state of South Carolina, and it looked like friend of the show, the Big Show, was going to win, which is one of the people that I added. He needed a couple extra, and so the bracket just disappeared. It just never came. It just suddenly just stopped doing it. So I mean, maybe precedent has been set, and so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would just be unfortunate.
It would be. Listen, I'm not going to say what's going to happen here. I'm simply going to say, I think for me,
He just changed the name. There's no way he pulled it.
I think for me, it would be a matter of, it would have to, I think it would earn a call out. And then I think I would leave it to y'all to decide what the punishment or what the shame should be if he did indeed yoink his bracket after a tough opening round. If he did indeed yank the bracket, I will leave it up to y'all to decide what the shame level should be for that. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. Got a couple of things to let you know. Numero uno. We got John Blau of the Post and Courier coming up to join us here in about 37 minutes from right now. We will ask him, now that not only is the season over, but now that we've had a couple of days to sleep on it, what the future of Clemson basketball looks like. We will also take a look over at the Clemson baseball team. Took 2 out of 3 against Wake Forest. It has been a minute since Los Tigres were able to get one over on the Demon Deacons on the hard or on the diamond.
So we'll talk to John Blau about what went right for Clemson baseball and what it means as ACC play is now underway in college hardball. That's coming up at 8:40, but right now it is time for the Audio Blitz, the best audio we've picked up since the last time we did the Audio Blitz. Those of you that have listened to the show for any length of time, you may know, and I will admit something here that I should not admit on the radio, but I will nonetheless. Rob Brown suffers with a touch of the diagnosed ADHD. And there are times that that's a massive benefit for me because having a touch of the diagnosed ADHD it means my attention can be in multiple places at once. And when I mean for that to happen, it makes me a world-class multitasker. That superpower is never more in play than it is during the March Madness tournament. There are other times where it's a bit of a problem because I can also go to the other end of the spectrum and hyperfixate on something. That is, become so engrossed in something that other, equally and sometimes more important tasks can take a back seat. Charles Barkley was on TV because a portion of the Inside the NBA on TNT crew also does CBS's studio show for the tournament. And Chuck and the gang, including Ernie and Kenny, were all watching basketball together when Ernie asked a question of Chuck Barkley about a game that was not the Michigan State Bryant game.
Charles Barkley, biggest takeaway from the first half?
Well, I think that's a good question.
Thank you very much.
That's his job. Totally his job. I was
Kind of came out of left field for you.
Would you expect me not to ask you anything? Would you expect him to sit here and just let you?
Just look at you.
I was you know the game I'm watching. I'm watching Brian against MSU.
You can't watch more than one game at a time. You watch all these TV shows at one time.
That's at night, man. This is at night. They're not all at the same time, man. One after the other. Ernie, I'm not gonna lie. I was paying attention to the Brian score. So get at the Clark or Kenneth, please.
Kenny, you got that is priceless. Yeah, I'll take first. Yeah, that's a first. I wasn't watching. That's somebody else. He's a man of many firsts, by the way.
Chuck straight up said on nationally syndicated television, I wasn't watching. Ernie, why don't you ask somebody else?
I can personally say that I have never not been paying attention to the show. So, that would never happen on this side.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, there were 3 games going on, including one because Michigan State for a minute there was trailing Bryant. This is a Michigan State team. Chuck's got him in the Final Four, knocking off Auburn to get there. There's a lot of people that do. Tom Izzo's team.
I got him in my final.
Yeah. Lot of people got Michigan State, and I don't blame you. Sparty was playing good basketball going through the Big Ten tourney and then into the big dance. A lot of people, including Chuck, riding with MSU. So he was locked in because Bryant, which I can tell you nothing about, was giving Sparty everything they wanted and a little bit more. And Chuck said, yeah, I got nothing, buddy. I wasn't watching that game. Whatever game you're talking about, I was locked in on MSU, and I respect that. John Calipari, the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks, they were up against St. John's Red Storm, led by Rick Pitino. And a lot of people, me included, were rolling with the Red Storm. I bought into the Rick Pitino hype, and I don't think I was wrong for buying into the Rick Pitino hype. I didn't buy into the John Cal hype. I just thought Rick Pitino had a better team. Turns out the Razorbacks, whoa, Pitsui, got the better of them. Why did that sound like goofy? That was questionable.
I don't know. It sounded more. It definitely sounded like a more like a Mel Blanc.
Yeah, it was
voice.
not good.
Yeah.
Either way, John Cal walking off the court got asked by the CBS Sports sideline reporter about the folks that doubted his Razorbacks, and he dropped a bar.
These kids, I'm so proud of them, how they play and fight. And persevered. They threw us in the coffin. They just forgot the nails. We pushed it open and we come out.
They threw us in a coffin. They just forgot the nails.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
a line from John Cal. I freaking love that. They put us in a coffin. They just forgot the nails, and we came right back out. Bong. That's spectacular. That's spectacular. All right.
Did you just say bong?
Yeah, I was trying to do like the Undertaker thing because I don't have it over here. There it is. There it is. That is now the official soundbite of the Arkansas Razorbacks. They put us in the coffin. They just forgot the nails. Buddy, I'm right back on the John Calipari train.
Buddy.
Right back on the John Cal train. All right, let's keep going. John Skipper used to be the man in charge of the four-letter network ESPN. He's not anymore. And he has been spending some time on the podcast circuit, including on Pablo Torres' podcast, Pablo Finds Out. And in the following clip, Pablo finds out something very interesting, according to John Skipper. Take it with a grain of salt about the future of the NCAA tournament.
They're saying $1 billion is where they are in their current TV deal for the 68-member tournament.
Yeah, the 68's ridiculous. No, I'd want 96.
It's never even been a consideration to expand the tournament to that number.
Oh, no, it has been.
Because
It has been.
Has there been momentum to 96 teams?
I know that the NCAA has discussed it several times, and it will happen at some point because they'll want to get more money.
but you were offering it 10 years ago.
I know.
So what do you mean it'll happen one day?
It will happen one
You
day.
were already in the market offering more money for 96 and it was turned down. And we're here all these years later, 2 extensions later, and it's never been put to 96.
It's because of the beauty of a committee. And the committee decides that the right number, and this is now back to the football, is 4 to 12. The right number to go to is 8 or 16.
So you're saying that's a vestige of the politics that
Yeah,
are now
it's
going
a-
to be irrelevant because the haves and have-nots are already very evidently one or the other.
So John Skipper says that for at least a few years now, quietly, behind the scenes, behind closed doors, the expansion of the NCAA basketball championship tournament has not been discussed moving from 64 to 76 or whatever that number was, or 84, whatever that number was, that they have already had discussions about moving it to 96 teams that make it into the tournament. And ladies and gentlemen, what you're going to find here is a very interesting conversation that we have had many times about many things. We have ourselves a bit of a market conundrum. Where is the crest where the amount of money in does not hit the apex where the product is saturated and people go, nah, it's not interesting anymore, right? How much can it reminds me of a movie franchise. They make a movie and it makes $1 gazillion. And they go, oh, that made $1 gazillion. We got to make a sequel. And they make a sequel. And it makes $1 gazillion plus $1. And they go, oh, man, that's really good. Now we got to make it a trilogy. And they make it a trilogy, and it makes $1 gazillion. And then at some point, it gets to the apex where you go, all right, we're still making money. We're still on the upward trajectory. But if we make one more, it's going to get to the point of either saturation or it's going to get to the point where it's real hard to tell a good story out of what we have so far. And the story suffers because of it. And either your audience gets bored because they go, we've seen this already. Or your audience goes, this story sucks now. And even though it came from something that we loved, we don't love it anymore and we're out. 96 feels like it would be, to me, past that saturation point. But the people in charge of said product, they're going to push that envelope as far as that envelope can be pushed. And John Skipper's saying 96 has been in play for a hot minute now. I think 96 hasn't happened yet, even though we've had the talk about moving it to, 70, whatever, 78 or whatever, starting next year or the year after that. 96 hasn't been in play because you don't just bottle rocket up to the top of that number. What you do is you just kind of go. I've told you the whole time. I think the college football playoff number is going to end up being probably 16 is where it's going to park at for a little while. But they didn't just go straight to 16. They went to 12 first. Why? To see if we as fans would buy in. And the answer is we did. And it was compelling, and we watched, and the numbers were there. So then they're going to go to 14 or 16 next. And then they're going to go up to 16. And they'll see. They'll hang out at 16 for 2 or 3 years. And if we're still there and the ratings are still there and we're all still in, then it'll go to the 6. Then it'll go up to 18. Then it'll go to 20. Then to 24. And wherever it is that the ratings stop growing, there'll be a number where you got everybody, every pair of eyeballs you can get. That's where they'll stop. College basketball's 96 is on the table. But they're going to ease toward, we're going to go into the 80s first, the 70s, the 80s, then the 90s to find out, do we bail out from the first round? Is there too much basketball in the first 2 rounds when we have, instead of having 16 games on Thursday and 16 games on Friday? Maybe we have 3 straight days of 16 games or 4 straight days of, maybe we have 2 days of 24 games. Where's the point where you're not adding any more eyeballs? Because that is what the number is ultimately going to be. It's a business decision, man. It really is. All right, one more before we run to a break. You all remember the saga of Lemon Pepper Lou? Remember during the COVID restrictions 5 years ago in the bubble? There was a big blow up. Lemon Pepper Lou got suspended for 10 games in the NBA bubble because he disappeared from the bubble and was seen at Magic City Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta, Georgia, having lemon pepper wings. Why? Because they're the best wings on planet Earth. Well, yesterday, Lou Williams showed up on Michelle Beadle's podcast, and he gave the actual story.
People think I left the bubble to go to Magic City. No, I was excused from the bubble to go to a funeral.
Oh, that's when Jack Harlow posted you or whatever?
Yes, I was excused to go to a funeral. I left the funeral, and Magic City was...
And you were hungry.
No, but... Obviously. To understand Atlanta, we eat at our strip clubs. Our strip clubs are our restaurants.
Are you speaking for all of Atlanta when you say
I am.
Okay.
Ask around. I really am. Ask around. And they knew everything. I'll speed it up. They knew everything, but the fact of the matter was when I got back, they quarantined me for 10 days. This should tell you what really happened because I never got suspended. I was never fined, anything. I was 10-day quarantined, and they told me, we're going to make an example out of you because we don't want anybody else thinking that they can go and do that.
Jesus.
10 days.
Yes, and they literally would leave my food at the door like I was like some
prisoner.
Or some sick prisoner maniac.
So Lemon Pepper Lou said, I was at a funeral. And in Atlanta, we eat at the strip club. Which, by the way, I've talked to people in Atlanta because this has been a conversation we've been having on this show for 5 years running the Magic City Wings.
So kids and grandmas eat there?
Here's what I can tell you for a fact.
That made it sound like collective we, like all of Atlanta.
Here's what I can tell you for a fact, Lonzo. Magic City is on Uber Eats, and they turn tens of thousands of dollars a month on Uber Eats from people ordering wings from Magic City to their house. So it ain't wrong. But Lemon Pepper Lou says, I caught the suspension because they were making an example out of me, not because I did anything wrong. I don't know, man. We may have to revisit this. All right, when we come back, is Dan Hurley the most interesting man in sports right now? I'm not saying good. I'm not saying bad. I'm saying interesting. I'll tell you some comments that made me kind of think maybe he is. Back after this on The Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
I don't even know where to go with that comment.
It is not like the Golden Corral. I have been to the Golden. I have not. Listen, I'm gonna hit Magic City at some point. I say it every time I go home, but it's always a spot where I'm on a schedule on the way or on the way back. I am going to at some point. I'm gonna try to do it this year. I'm actually going to Atlanta I think in July to meet some friends for a Braves weekend. We're going to head over and hit like 3 home games out of a 4-game stand. And we may have to go ahead and program that. I've already gotten permission from the wife, so we'll see. Give me 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
So I finally get the game room done, wired. The floors are in, everything's good. I'm lounging in the large beanbag chair, watching basketball. And then suddenly something starts banging on the floor like it wants to get in. I mean, big time, like someone was trapped down there and banging on the floor. I mean, do I call an exterminator or a hunter?
Here's the thing,
I
Lonzo.
don't know who I call. I ain't going under there.
Here's the thing.
I mean, it was shaking me. It was pounding on the floor.
I have an important detail to add to this conversation, which is this is nowhere close to the first time that you've told me this story.
No, but not like this. No. I mean, it's
so
like
whatever's under there is growing,
or it's something different, and it was mad because it couldn't get in. Or
okay,
something. It was,
whatever's under there is either growing or ate whatever was under there earlier.
That's it. That's the one. That's probably the one. I don't know about ghost hunters. I mean, this thing, Lisa heard it on the other side of the house. She's like, what is that? I was like, I don't know, but it's trying to get in.
Right,
She's
I'm writing this down for a segment later on down on the show.
She's like, well, what do we do? I don't know.
Lonzo's floor creature.
I'm thinking about maybe getting a visit from either Odie or Bill Frady.
I saw that pig Odie killed.
Yeah, that was a big.
Holy crap, that's
yeah,
a big pig. That's a big hoss.
Oh, he showed me the video. Video of, I don't know if he had it on his scope or what, but he showed me video of him looking through the scope at the thing because I was asking him about how close it was in the scope. He said it was like 100 and something yards. So. You can see him hit it, and then it just wobbles, and then it goes down. It's like, that thing, you're right, it looks big on through the scope. I forget what he called it, but he called it something when it covers the – no, something when something covers your entire scope.
Big AF.
By the way, something like that could be under my floor because that's what it sounded like. At first, I thought chupacabras, but chupacabras don't get that big. As far as I know. I'm thinking maybe bear. To the point when I was coming out to go to the car this morning, I was definitely looking around like, oh, crap, what if that thing, whatever it is, comes out?
Wait, Steven, are you Ray Memorial Bracket?
I believe he is.
William said I crawl houses for a living. I'll come check it out. William, I don't know, buddy. I'm a little worried for your safety based on Lonzo's description of what's happening. If you're going to crawl that, you're going to need to bring some very heavy weaponry down there. So, after the Michigan cheating scandal went down, a cheating scandal that after Michigan won the national championship, we all just kind of moved on from.
It's not a scandal.
I mean,
It's been proven to a degree.
Okay, fair. I mean, still scandalous.
There we go.
Scandalous in that.
Except for those of us who expect Michigan to do stuff like that.
Scandalous in that it happened. They won a natty, and the powers that be were just kind of like, okay, Jim Harbaugh just leaves. There were some other punishments handed down to assistant coaches and staffers and whatnot, but like they just kind of let it be what it is, right? Big scandal. And I said in a promo that we had running for a while, actually it may still be in the rotation, I said for a hot minute there, Jim Harbaugh, you already hang out with the dirtiest player in the game, Ric Flair. Woo! You might as well lean into being the heel. You might as well lean into being the bad guy. You might as well lean into the fact that everybody hates you and wants to see you fail and just remind them consistently and continuous a lot of times in a row that you are the dirtiest player in the game.
That's
and yet
my
you are
favorite one
also.
so far. That was wow.
I'm goodish at this. Just remind him constantly that it doesn't matter if you hate me. It doesn't matter if you dislike me. It doesn't matter how you feel about me because I am the reigning, defending, undisputed college football national champion. I know how to win. That's exactly right. But he leaves. He goes to the National Football League, and we've all just moved on from the story. But the point here is that I said for a while, just embrace being the dirtiest player in the game. Enter Dan Hurley, the head coach of the UConn Huskies. Now, Dan Hurley's had an interesting 3 years in a row. The Huskies went back national champs the last 2 years. This year, they were a public pick favorite to make a run back into the Final Four, but they ran up into a buzzsaw that is the Florida Gators. Dan Hurley and the Huskies gave Florida everything they wanted and a little bit more in the second round, but the Gators, down the stretch, just good enough to slip by the mighty Gators of Florida. So, it's been an interesting year, Dan Hurley. After the loss to the Florida Gators, the Baylor Bears were waiting in the tunnel to make their way out onto the hardwood because they had a scheduled showdown with another Final Four favorite, the Duke Blue Devils. And as Dan Hurley walked past the Bears, the cameras and the microphones were live. As Dan Hurley walked by the Baylor Bears, who were getting ready to head out to the floor, he said, I hope they don't you like they us. I hope they don't do that to you, Baylor. Quote, end quote. And a lot of people say, well, that's kind of gross, Dan Hurley. That's kind of gross. That's kind of not okay, man. Like, and in fairness, Dan Hurley's UConn Huskies kind of slipped up down the stretch, man. They had like a 4-minute period. They couldn't find a bucket to save their lives. They had a couple of bad turnovers down the stretch. And Florida, definitely a national championship caliber basketball team, took advantage of those moments. And so a lot of people said, whoa, Dan Hurley, maybe that's just a little bit too much. But it's not. It's not the first time something like that has happened. Because earlier this year, there was another game that the UConn Huskies were in an absolute shootout. And Dan Hurley also felt in that game like it wasn't going his way. Now, there was no microphone pointed at Dan Hurley during that game. But on video, Dan Hurley very clearly is getting into the face of one of the officials and says to that official, I am the best coach in the game. Like it's clear as day, I'm not a professional lip reader. But even I saw that he said, I am the best coach in the game, as he was lobbying for his team to get more calls or the other team to get less calls or whatever his issue was in that moment. And that's just kind of Dan Hurley. Well, after that game was concluded, in the post-game presser, Dan Hurley was asked about telling a referee that he is the best coach in the game. And he responded thusly.
Did I say that? No. Yeah, I've created this for myself. I'm not no victim. But I just wish that they would not have the camera on me 90% of the time, unless they feel like it's driving ratings, and more assholes on Twitter that could put clips of me from a game and say, yeah, look how big of a monster he is. He's yelling at a ref again. What a monster.
You know, Rob, sometimes people just look at you a certain way and they think you're something. I'm not a monster. I'm not.
Tell me right now that that's not one of the best wrestling heel promos you've heard in a long time. My man said, hey, did I say that? He started it with, did I say that?
Did I say that?
He said, did I say that? And then when the reporter said, yes, Daniel, all of us saw it. It wasn't exactly, and Dan Hurley, if you've seen him on the ground, he yells. He's not like walking in, like he yells. It's very clear what he said. Like I said, I'm not a lip reader, and even I was like, oh, okay. And then, once it's pointed out to him that, yes, Daniel, you did say to a referee, I'm the best coach in the game. He said, oh, well, I wish they wouldn't put the cameras on me 90% of the time. I wish the cameras weren't on me, but I guess it helps y'all get ratings. That's the most heel promo I've ever heard cut. There are wrestling heels that don't cut a wrestling heel promo that good. My man initially started with a, did I say that? And they went, yeah, buddy, you're on national television.
That doesn't work for me, brother.
It's like when the bad guy come out, punches the champ in the face, and then goes to the back room, and they're like, hey, man, why did you punch the champ in the face? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Buddy, it's on a Jumbotron. Buddy. We all saw it, buddy. Deep. Pal. And then he goes, well, Renee, let me tell you, if you guys wouldn't put the camera on me all the time because I'm a ratings machine. People want to see me. They want to hear me. They want to be me. Yeah. If you didn't put the camera on me all the time, then maybe it wouldn't look like I'm such a bad influence on the kids out there. But if you want to keep getting the ratings out of me that you're getting out of me, then keep the camera on me, just like you're doing right now. But don't blame me when the camera shows what I did. Like, that's the best wrestling heel. There are pro wrestlers in the WWE that aren't cutting promos, that are not cutting promos as good as that heel promo from Dan Hurley. And I think that's interesting. After the Yukon Huskies lost to the Florida Gators, Dan Hurley had to, once again, step in front of a microphone at a post-game press conference and was asked about the success of UConn and was asked about the attention that has been heaped upon not just his program, but him for being a heel. And he said this.
You know, I feel a lot of emotion, man. We're a passionate program. The players play with it. I coach with it. And you're always drained when it's over. You struggle with the ego at times because you've been on this incredible run. So it'll be nice to get to a normal off season and just get back to myself as a coach and not have to throw out first pitches. And you should only be ringing stock market bells and throwing out first pitches when you win the major championship.
Dan Hurley's the best heel not in wrestling. Like, he's the best wrestling heel not in wrestling.
Did he bring the bell?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Okay, because
I have no idea.
It's implied, but I don't recall.
Well, my man said, I won't have to go throw out first pitches and do media appearances and ring the bell at the Dow Jones or the New York Stock Exchange, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm poor. This is Class A workshop. Put it on a video to show the next generation of bad guys how to be a bad guy out of Dan Hurley. It's spectacular work. Guy takes the L. The champ laid him on the center of the mat. 1, 2, 3. Pinned him clean. He goes to the back. He grabs the mic, and they're like, hey, man, you were out there telling refs that you're the best coach in the game? You're out there screaming at officials. You're telling Baylor as you leave the floor, I hope they don't you like they us? And then you took the fat L, Dan. How do you feel about it? My man goes, well, it's sometimes it's hard to deal with the ego, You have some success like I've had, and you get a little big for your britches, and sometimes you got to be taught a lesson. Sometimes a little humility goes a long way, and I have found that humility in this loss. I was distracted. They asked me to throw out first pitches, and they asked me to go do media appearances, and they asked me to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange because, we've had this incredible run of success, and sometimes even the best fall down.
For real. Do you feel him, sir? Yeah, I do. Sometimes
even Superman gets hit with a little kryptonite and takes the L to Lex Luthor. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to us. And so, little humility, little humble. Like, the same dude that 3 minutes before that go into the locker room told Baylor, I hope they don't you like they us. 3 minutes later at the podium, he's like, hey, we've had a good run, and sometimes you get a little big for your own britches, Sometimes you just get a little carried away, and maybe that was me. Maybe that was us. And I think it's a good time for us to maybe head back into the locker room and just kind of sharpen up the game plan a little bit. We want to be a champ again. Like, that's class A bad guy right there. And so there's this weird part of me as a wrestling fan. There's this weird part of me that is kind of a Dan Hurley fan now. There's this weird part of me that kind of loves this guy because Dan Hurley is the best bad guy in sports. And he might be one of the best bad guys in wrestling, and he ain't even in wrestling. Dan Hurley's the best heel I've ever seen. He's incredible. Let's take a break. When we come back, John Blau with the Post-Courier talks a little Clemson basketball, a little post-mortem of the season, and we turn our eyes to the diamond as Clemson baseball went on the road, got a big ACC series win over the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest. We'll break that down with them and more, all coming up on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. I was too busy being awesome and got distracted. Is he the Jake Paul of college basketball? No, because he's actually fighting real fighters. All right, we're going to step away and get John Blau hooked up. Y'all stay right there. We'll be back in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. The Rob Brown Show back on your radio. It's the fan upstate. Rob Brown, the great one, Lonzo, and now...
You started calling me
Lonzo.
Well,
I'm combining the great one, Lonzo.
The blonde bimbo, Lonzo.
The blonde bimbo of sports, Lonzo. And our next guest, the young man who covers the Clemson Tiger athletic department for the Post and Courier. John Blau joins us on the phone as he does every Monday at 8:40. Good morning, John Blau. Basketball over. Did you get some rest and relaxation, or were you locked into that Clemson-Wake Forest series?
Both. I got a little bit of, a couple of naps, maybe, and also watched, the Clemson-Wake Forest series, and Clemson make another comeback, which they do all the time.
We're going to get into that in a second, but I have to ask you, and this is just as a this is a personal question, John Blau. You're a writer. You cover games in person. Are you a pen and paper during the game to take notes guy? Have you moved up to using a tablet like everybody? And if so, what's the preferred pen for noted sports coverer John Blau?
Oh, yeah, I do not use a pen and paper anymore. I think I did that when I was covering high school sports because I actually had to take stats. So I absolutely did it back then. Do not do it now. Now it's mostly Twitter helps me take notes. I log important moments so that everybody else gets to see them as I go along.
I like that. I obviously follow John Blau on Twitter, as should all of you, JONBLAU. If you're a Clemson fan, you're not going to find anybody who's more locked in covering games than John Blau. I flipped over to the tablet about a year ago, John, except for I just opened my backpack and I had a pen I've been carrying around for like 4 years, and I just found it shattered. And it was like a day-ruining moment for me.
I mean, was the ink everywhere? That's the thing that can be really
No,
bad.
but like the casing of the pen shattered into multiple pieces. So like there's no getting this one back, right? It wasn't like the ink exploded and it's like, oh, I got a mess, but I can say it. No, the pen is just done. This pen's given me like 3 solid years of service and it's gone just like that. It's depressing, man.
Yes, that is really disappointing. Again, like I probably moved away from pens because of explosions. And, the laptop bag, the inside has at least 3 or 4 smears from exploded pens.
All right, good.
I just don't even go there.
Good. I feel better that I'm not alone. All right, John Blau, let's put this college basketball season to bed. Brad Brownell and his Clemson Tiger basketball team dropped their opening round game on Thursday to McNeese State. Former Clemson Tiger Will Wade, the head coach, even though he's leaving for NC State. I came into that game thinking, this is a 5-12 matchup that's interesting, not just because McNeese State probably has more length and size, I think, than any of the other 12 seeds, but also maybe there's that motivation from Will Wade to put the exclamation point on his time in Louisiana with a win over his former school, the school he got his start at. Can I get your 36,000-foot view of that final game of the season for this year's basketball team?
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard that McNeese State played a defense that they had never played all year. Clemson, I think, prepared for man-to-man. All of a sudden, they came out with a zone. It looked like Clemson was out of sorts, and they just started missing shots, and they had some open shots, but they're still missing shots. And they really started pressing. That's what Brad Brown thinks he saw. And then, obviously 31-13 at half. One of the more shocking halves I've seen of Clemson basketball. Definitely the worst half they played all year. Obviously, they rally in the second half. They get it, back to 2 points by the end of the game, which in a way makes it almost a little more disappointing because if they had played better, maybe they could have won that game. But I mean, I guess the really 30,000-foot view, like you're saying, it's obviously a really disappointing result. I think everybody will remember this game just like they remembered a couple of years ago. Clemson goes one and done against Morehead State. It's kind of the same level, other than obviously you're in the tournament this time, not like that a couple of years ago where you weren't even in the tournament. But at the same time, it doesn't completely wipe away every accomplishment. I mean, this is March Madness. These types of things happen. This was a very good team, yet there were some depth issues. There were some shooting issues coming into the tournament. You obviously lose Dylan Hunter to injury. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I don't think it negates everything, but it's obviously going to be a very well-remembered performance in terms of just how shockingly bad it was in the first half, and then how much they rallied, but then fell short at the end.
Yeah, the kind of take I had on it, John, was that this Tiger team, the last couple of years, the trajectory has very clearly been up. The talent has very clearly been up, and I think especially after the Elite Eight run last year that the expectations were there. And if you go talk to a Carolina, a Duke, a UConn, a team that's been there for year after year after year for a very long time, their fans will tell you, hey, sometimes this happens, right? Like sometimes you just get upset. That's why we all love this tournament. But it doesn't kind of take the sour out of the mouth a little bit of having those elevated expectations after an Elite Eight run. So with that feeling and that emotion, I know we're obviously ways out from Brad Bennett really getting into the gears of getting the offseason going, but he did get his extension. He's locked in through 2031. What does this offseason look like? Do we think Clemson's going to go heavy into the portal? Do we have a recruiting class that we expect higher expectations out of? What's this offseason look like for the basketball team?
Yeah, no, they're going to have to go into the portal at least for a couple spots. Obviously, Christian Reeves is there at center. I know Trent Steinauer, I think is how you pronounce his name, is one of the recruits that's going to come in at that spot. But I don't think you can rely on either of those at the 5. You're probably going to have to try to find another Victor Larkin to feel better about your roster, like going into next year. At the 4 spot, obviously, Ian Shefflin, very important player. I don't think you have anybody naturally that's definitely going to play. Like a Dallas Thomas, a redshirt freshman, or, maybe go small with a Chauncey Wiggins or Chase Thompson, the freshman. Looks pretty good, but you can't count on that. So you probably need a 4 as well. In the backcourt, I think you feel pretty good. You've got, obviously, Dylan Hunter coming back. You've got Ace Buckner. You got Del Jones. You got some of these guys. I know there's a question that maybe James Zachary could get back another year. But with the JUCO year he had overlapping with the COVID year, it's kind of iffy. I don't know if that's going to happen. But you feel pretty good that you at least got enough there to get you by. But definitely in the front court, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to go and get a couple pieces of the portal to feel pretty good about this roster, and you're going to have to see a lot of development from a lot of guys. Again, like a Del Jones, a Chauncey Wiggins. We haven't quite seen that next jump. You have to see a little bit of improvement from each of those guys to kind of keep the NCAA tournament as a goal that's within reach next year, not take a step back as is possible because of a couple of guys that they've lost.
John Blau from the Post and Courier joining us here on the Rob Brown Show, and the Fan Upstate does so every Monday at 8:40. All right, very quickly, John, let's take a look over at the Diamond ACC play underway for the Clemson Tigers, a 3-game set against Wake Forest, the team that has pretty much had Clemson's number the past handful of years, but Clemson takes 2 out of the 3, including a big come-from-behind victory, down 6-0 against number 11 before they fought their way back to win that game 7-6, which means to me this team's got a little resilience, a little gut out to it, which I love to see. Just give me your overall thoughts first and foremost about this series as a whole and what we learned about the baseball team.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric Backus has said multiple times, his players that go in, that their motto is never out of the fight. I think it was even a year ago on the same date was the Florida State game where Clemson came back from a huge deficit late, won that game, and I think they won that series as well. And obviously Wake Forest, they do the same thing. Again, like you said, down 6-0 all the way back to 7-6. So it's just kind of been a program thing. I mean, it's just they love to play from behind. They love to rally. They did the same this weekend. Obviously, the Saturday game down 10-0 and made it a 12-10 game. So there's a lot of resilience that's just kind of been embedded in these players that Eric Backus has brought as a mentality. And so, I mean, again, never out of the fight. They've showed that they can make a comeback. It feels like the bats are kind of resurging a little bit, allowing them to make some of those comebacks. They still got to figure out the Sunday starter spot. Justin LeGurdick had 2 straight outings where he didn't even last an inning, and so they're going to have to figure out that because you don't want to try to win series with a Sunday starter who can't last through the first inning. But the bats are there. The bullpen has been outstanding. I mean, to be able to get them in a position to be able to make those comebacks. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously number 7 beats number 11 in the country. It's obviously a high level win, and Clemson probably will continue to move up those top 25 rankings.
You've had some spots where you've relied on the pitching. You've had some spots where you've relied on the bats. Aiden Kanak had 6 innings of 2-hit ball, 10 Ks in the opening set of the series, a 5-1 win back on Friday. Is this team kind of starting to find its balance? I know with a lot of college baseball team, it's going to take a couple of weeks, maybe in a conference play, before the team really kind of finds its chemistry 1 through 9 at the dish. Are we kind of feeling like Clemson's in that zone right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think some guys are coming around. Again, he's still got to figure out that Sunday starter spot. But, you talk about Aiden Kanak. I mean, I think through 4 starts, I think his ERA was like 5.30, which, is not horrible, but not good for an ace. I think the last few starts, I think he's a .69 ERA the last couple of starts, and in ACC play, and I think it's like a .46 WHIP or something like that, something ridiculous. 22 Ks in 2 starts, and so yeah, he's really turned it on. I think again the bullpen's really figured it out. Lucas Malstead and a few of these other guys, and I think hitting wise, Cam Canarella, Luke Gaffney, some of those guys slumped a little early. They're starting to really kind of find the stride you were hoping they would have with Dominic Listy and Jaron Purify at the top of the order now, all producing. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that have kind of clicked into gear. They're still, again, trying to figure out that rotation. I think it really did hurt Dane Moeller, the freshman. I think they were really high hopes for him, and then the UCL injury and being out for the entire year. But if they can get that figured out, they can figure out the back end of their starting rotation, I think they'll be pretty good.
John Blau covers the Clemson Athletic Department for the Post and Courier, joins us every Monday at 8:40 as we switch our attention over to the Diamond for the rest of the spring. John, my man, I appreciate it, brother. I'm go get you some rest, buddy. It's nothing till the midweek series, I'm sure.
Yeah, I actually got spring ball later today, so we'll be out there.
There it is.
We'll get some naps in again as we have.
There it is. Team Siesta forever. John Blau, talk to you next week, big fella. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
You got it. John Blau for the Post and Courier again joins us every Monday right here on the Fan Upstate, and we are appreciative of his time. We have a lot more to get to in the final 60 minutes of the Rob Brown Show. It is opening day in Major League Baseball. The Braves made a couple of moves over the weekend. We'll talk about those. We got to get a little NHL and NBA playoff hot. Well, we're not in the playoffs, but the drama's picking up. We love some drama.
It's also not opening day. It's going to be opening day.
Well, it's not opening day
but
today.
You made it sound like it was.
It's opening day week.
Okay, there you go. That's better.
It's opening day week in Major League Baseball, and the Braves have made some moves, which we will evaluate. Ian Anderson gone, but they go pick up a guy who's had some success and also has been sent down to the minors a bunch of times. Good move, bad move. We'll discuss that and more. All of that comes after the starter of sports flashes, Lonzo. It's a compliment, by the way.
Okay, I just realized I'm standards and practices here on the show. I'm going to tell you about this. It's a record-setting Sweet 16 as Ole Miss became the 7th Southeastern Conference team to make the 3rd round of the NCAA Basketball Championship Tournament. Conference already set the bar with the most teams included in the tournament with 16. That's a lot. That's like almost everybody. The Atlanta Braves made a pitching move yesterday, sending starter Ian Anderson off to the Angels in return for left-hander Jose Suarez through Anderson carried a 2.65 ERA, but walked 18 through 17 innings this spring and hasn't pitched in the majors since 2022 after undergoing Tommy John surgery in 2023. Tune in this afternoon from 3 to 7 p.m. for Wire to Wire. Cole Bryson and Diesel ride shotgun on your drive home and get you up to date on all the latest and local and national sports news. I haven't noticed if he sharpened his teeth yet. He could have sharpened his teeth. It's possible. I would like to see that. No, I wouldn't. That would be scary. I still think he's just trying to be Tony Stark. If he just shaved this part right there, he's ready to go. he comes back in the room, I want to see if I can talk him into it because I just thought of a reason why you should do it. All right, so I know you're not going to do this, but
Okay.
I'm going to try this anyway. Comic-Con's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You just shave off the sides, put on your wedding suit, throw the glasses on, you go as Tony Stark.
So I'm only going to be able to go.
You can meet Sting
as Tony Stark.
As Tony Stark. I mean, why not?
Think he'll appreciate that?
He'd get it.
I think I'm trying to remember. I did Iron Man for Halloween like a number of years ago.
So you're saying you might have a chess piece somewhere.
I don't know if I still have it. I made one that year. Out of, you remember those tap lights that they used to sell on TV infomercials?
They're still there. I have one in my closet.
Okay, I took one of those and I jigsawed the bottom off of it to make it thin, so it was just like the top piece and the circuitry left. And then I basically made cardboard cutouts to cover it to make it the triangle. And so when I put it, I taped it athletic taped it to my chest and put on a suit over it. And that way when I was wearing the suit, I could just tap my chest and it would light up. And it actually was really cool when I got it to work.
See?
But I don't think I think I broke it or something. I mean, I guess I could try to make another one.
It'd be kind of cool. I'm just saying, you know.
The wife and I, like 2 years ago, when she was super into the Marvel, we're going to do Iron Man. And James just said phony Stark.
That's why I was laughing.
I've been called worse.
Cracker.
The final 60 minutes of the Rob Brown Show goes now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Fan Upstate. Rob Brown, the great one, Lonzo, and you on the Spartan Burgers text line. The Hub City Spartan Burgers text line at 844-326-3663, 844-326-3663. That is also the number to call the radio broadcast, 844-326-3663. That's 844-FANFONE. If you want to get on the air, you can shoot me a tweet at The Rob Brown Show. Shoot Lonzo a tweet at Lonzo on Word. Hit everybody up at the station at the Fan Upstate on the X. Facebook stream is live, facebook.com/The Fan Upstate. The YouTube stream is live, YouTube/The Fan Upstate. We are also available at the Fan Upstate on X. You can get to The Rob Brown Show on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch. Just search The Rob Brown Show. Subscribe. We are live all 4 hours every day that we do a show, which this week is, unfortunately for Lonzo and I, all 5 days. for like the first time in a year.
All right, I'm texting Cole to ask him if Diesel dropped his bracket.
Text Diesel.
No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to cause any problems, that way. But I'm just ask Cole because he'd know.
He'll spill the proverbial beans. So we have a couple of things going on in our bracket competition right now. We are keeping an eye on the bracket challenge, the wire-to-wire bracket contest, which includes an Armada assault. They have the Tolo takeover. We have the Armada assault. It's a little more aggressive, but we're rolling with it. So, as it stands right now, Rob Brown is T26. However, 26 still good enough to be on the front page of the leaderboard. We will start to see the point total spread out a little bit because on Thursday and Friday, Sweet 16, obviously the games are worth triple the amount of points per selected winner than they were back in round number 1. And a lot of folks have seen their national champions fall out. A lot of people have seen 1 or 2 of their Final Four teams fall out, which means that they have left points on the table, whereas some folks, like Lonzo and I, still have all Final Four teams dancing. If all Final Four teams hit, brackets like ours are going to just skyrocket up to the top. So there's a lot of basketball left to be played, but we have some drama playing out in the bracket competition.
All right. Let me I'm getting some responses here. I asked Cole, did Diesel drop his bracket? And he said, "What do you mean by drop?"
Oh,
I was like, okay, I'm not trying to cause any problems here. So he's telling me the name of the bracket, and so I will now inform him that it's not there.
I mean, look, I've looked twice. All right, I haven't seen it yet. Now, again, I will peel back the curtain here. I hope not at the expense of our friendly competition. But Rob Brown had an incredible day. By the way, just 10 points up on Cole Bryson. 1 game up on Cole Bryson right now. Rob Brown had a really good opening day. Not as good of a second day. Not a bad day, just not as good of a second day. And so I tumbled off a little bit there.
Cole says he doesn't know. He gave me an emoji with the hands thing.
I suspect, can we be honest, if Diesel did indeed yank his bracket out of the competition, he's going to try to do that very discreetly, right?
Right. So not to let his co-host know, because he probably might say something about that.
He's going to do it discreetly, because while I will say that, listen, the shows are very much like conferences in college sports, right? Like Lonzo and I are the Big Ten. We're big, we're beefy, we're powerful, right? Cole and Diesel, with Cole's 4.840 speed, are like the SEC. A little more sleek, a little bit faster.
Built for finesse.
They're built for speed. Lonzo and I are not built for speed. We're built for raw, unbridled, unapologetic power. Okay? So the way that conference rivalries work, as those of you who school are in one know, Lonzo and I can talk smack to each other. We can go back and forth like brothers. But the minute that an outside voice levies criticism upon the other, upon the show, in that moment, Lonzo and I join forces. We tag team. We become the outsiders. And we put forward a unified front. We may speak that way to each other. The members of the Armada may toss some friendly jabs amongst themselves. But you outsiders, no. Because here on the Rob Brown Show, Lonzo, it just means more.
It just means more. Listen, I wasn't trying to cause a problem. We're trying to keep a tally about how we finished.
Absolutely.
How we finish as a station, and I can't find the fourth person who's on the station. I can't find them.
So Lonzo and I have one conference.
We do want to beat them. Okay, we do. Of course.
Lonzo and I 100% want to beat each other in the bracket contest. But more importantly, we want the show to beat theirs. It's a little friendly competition. On the flip side, there's Diesel and Cole, their own conference. They're the SEC. They're built for speed. And the two of them can throw verbal barbs at each other. The Tolos can engage in a little friendly bleep talk back and forth. Ain't no doubt about it. However, when an outsider over on that side starts getting into the weeds a little bit, they again present a unified front. If Diesel yanked his bracket out of this competition, which I'm not saying he did, but we can't find it.
He could have changed the name.
Absolutely.
I mean, people change their names all the time, including the person at the top.
Person at the top's changed their bracket name, I believe, 3 times.
Steven has declared it's him.
Steven has declared he has stepped in and claimed that bracket. He may have changed the name. I'm not saying Diesel yanked his bracket up out of the competition. What I am saying is this. If he did, I do believe he would do it discreetly. I do believe he would do it under the radar, because what he doesn't want to do is add a goose egg. Because if he adds
when
a
you're
goose
picking
egg,
your nose and you think no one's watching, but someone saw you do it. It's the same sort of thing. That kind of discreet. I'm just saying.
That under the radar discreet. Because if he did, then when it's all said and done, and you put together Lonzo and I's scores and you average them together, you put them together, add them up, divide them by 2 to find out what our radio show score is. If he yanked his bracket, that's a 0, okay? Which means it is Cole Bryson's score divided by 2, which means he's not, as long as Lonzo and I don't delete our brackets, we're going to win this thing now.
Well, and I've already told you my final, so we're probably pretty good because we're kind of pretty close.
Yeah.
So at least we get into the 4. Our 4 is probably
our 4 is still
similar.
alive.
Yeah,
we're in good shape. So, with that being said, this is very interesting. Because if Diesel did it, and again, I'm not saying he yanked his bracket. He may have very well changed the name. But if he did yank his bracket, he didn't tell his co-host about it. He is leaving Cole flapping out there in the wind all by himself to have to defend the honor of Wire to Wire in our bracket picking competition. And there's a lot of brackets ending in the name TRBS up on the top 2 pages of the leaderboard right now. And there's something to be said about that. So we're going to see what happens, a little controversy, a little drama in the bracket competition there. Number 2, the bracket that entered, I'm not going to say late. For those of you that weren't listening to the show last Friday, there was a little bit of conspiracy talk floating around. Because at 6 a.m., when we started the show last Friday, and we did a quick check-in after just one day of our bracket leaderboard, Rob Brown was tied for second on the leaderboard when the show started. There was one bracket ahead of me by 1 game after 1 day. I was 14-2. Somebody went 15-1. By the 7 o'clock hour, by the time the water cooler cheat sheet rolled around at 7 a.m., as it does every weekday at 7 a.m., we went and we looked, and all of a sudden, Rob Brown, who was, again, T2 to open the day, suddenly found himself tied for third. And there was a bracket at the top of the leaderboard I went 13-3. The bracket ahead of me went 14-2. There was a bracket at the top of the leaderboard that went 15-1 on day 1. Now, that's not impossible, nor is it unheard of. It happens. But it was interesting to me that at 6 a.m., I was tied 2 at 13-3. Leader was by themselves at 14-2. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the glass broke, the pyro flared, the walkout music started, and when you know it, just like that, there was a new contender atop the hill. Well, that new contender atop the hill, that new contender is still in first place. The Ray Memorial Bracket, TRBS, has 560 points. They stand alone atop the leaderboard. And more importantly than that, their bracket right now, as far as the Sweet 16 goes, has one team incorrect. One team. They had St. John's rolling. They have Tennessee and Kentucky correct. They have Houston and Purdue correct. They have St. Mary's in Alabama, with Alabama moving on, correct. They had BYU over Wisconsin, correct. They had one miss in Arizona over Oregon, but they still have Duke, who is their national championship pick, alive to advance out of the Sweet 16, so they're in good shape there. They had Auburn over Creighton, correct. Michigan over A&M, correct. Ole Miss over Iowa State. They actually got that one wrong. They and UNC moving on, but they do have Sparty and the Spartans moving on over Ole Miss into the Elite Eight. So there's only a couple of misses on this bracket. And not only do they remain number one, sole possession of first place, they stand alone atop the hill. But this was after a little controversy of a late addition to the bracket competition. Now, I will tell you that after everything that's gone down, even if there's some shady play here, I am still pulling for the Ray Memorial Bracket TRBS to win this whole thing, because it is now more important than ever that TRBS gets the dub. And it is now more important than ever because of one man, one individual. And this might be the most drama of the drama in the bracket competition. Last Friday morning when we started the show, I was going down the leaderboard because page number 1 had a lot of brackets that end in TRBS at the top of them. Chris Warren's was up there. Buckeye Mike's was up there. Friend of the show, Joey B, was up there. Waffle House Luke was up there. Brooke R was up there. And most of them still are. But there was also one name that was hanging out up towards the top of the leaderboard, and still is. And that was P1, friend of the show, and one of the few that have been awarded a captaincy in the Armada, a title reserved only for those who verifiably participate in the show on a day-to-day basis. Joey B, captain in the Armada. James, captain. Trey, captain in the Armada. Steven, captain in the Armada.
I think I found him.
Okay, hang on. We're coming back to that.
Okay.
I want to let that drama float. I want to get to this because this is bigger than that. This is bigger than that. The title of captain in the Armada, P1 of the Rob Brown Show, is reserved for the best of the best. And Brian had been awarded his captaincy in the Armada. He has been one of the ones who has been a P1, a captain. Every day he is in our chat. He is working with the show. He's providing commentary and content and context. He's been a legend on this show. And his name, Brian Pettit, TRBS, on Friday, was very close to the top of the leaderboard. And then this morning, I get on. I open up the bracket competition to go check. Rob Brown currently T26. A lot of basketball left. And as I'm going through the top of the board, because the top 2 brackets, no ties, straight up 1 and 2, both TRBS brackets. Lots of TRBS brackets up top. And then I saw something. Because the first and only bracket on the leaderboard that has Michigan State as the eventual national champions, which means if Sparty wins this thing, and I sincerely believe that they can, if Sparty wins this thing, this bracket is winning the bracket competition. And as I look and I say, oh, somebody went with the Stones pick of Michigan State, Tom Izzo and the Spartans to get it done, I see that the name out to the right is Brian Pettit Tolo. This man was awarded captaincy in the Armada. This man has been riding. In fact, when I put out the call last Thursday to invade the wire-to-wire bracket challenge, to fill up the leaderboard with TRBS labeled brackets, Brian was one of the very first to ask for the invite. Brian was one of the very first to say, I want in, I want to rep the Armada in a station-wide bracket competition. And I said, of course, you're a captain in the Armada. I expect nothing less. I sent him the invite. He got in, he labeled it TRBS, and then I wake up this morning and I find out that Brian has changed his affiliation, a heel turn for the ages from Captain Brian over to Team Tolo now. And I came up with the recognition that Brian somehow has been persuaded by Cole and Diesel. And I know why. Because they recognize that if Brian watches the Michigan State Spartans win the national championship, then they will automatically claim winners of this bracket competition. They invaded the Armada. And I'm not upset with Cole and Diesel. I understand. We're trying to win this thing just like they are. Lonzo and I want bragging rights that the Rob Brown Show claimed the station-wide bracket competition. Of course we do. However, Cole and Diesel took it upon themselves to reach out to a listener, to have a conversation with them, and somehow, some way persuade Brian to change his bracket, which is currently T6th, but really in fourth place. And the only Michigan State Spartan picker in the top half of the bracket to change his persuasion, his affiliation over to the Tolos so that if Sparty wins, they will have the top bracket in the competition. Brian, I want you to know. I want you to listen to me very closely. You've been a friend of the show. You'll still be a friend of the show because I understand sometimes people make bad decisions. Sometimes people are maybe offered something that they just can't say no to, even though they know it's the wrong thing to do. I want you to know, Brian, you've wounded me. You've hurt me. You have heel turned on the most powerful faction in sports talk entertainment, the Rob Brown Show Armada. And while I'm not saying that you will be permanently ejected from the Armada, I have made a decision. Your captaincy in the Armada is temporarily rescinded for your decision to make the move over. And I want you to know, Brian, that I am going to celebrate the victory of every TRBS bracket that elevates itself over yours. I have gone from saying on nationally syndicated radio that I believe Sparty can win this thing, and I'm actually in a weird way pulling for Tom Izzo to do it. I am pulling for no one to be defeated more than the Michigan State Spartans, and I don't want to see that Tolo label change back to a TRBS when it happens, Brian. You're one of them for the next 3 weeks. Live with it. Back after this on The Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
All right, so I found...
It's my favorite professional wrestling segment of the day, and we've done some good ones.
I found a bracket tied for 99th.
Okay.
Putting the L in Diesel. I don't recall seeing that before.
That could very well be him. He would make that joke.
I think that's him.
He would make that joke. Who's his champ?
Florida.
Mm-hmm. That was Diesel's pick, so I could see that being him. I'm going to text him. He's awake.
I know that's him. I would have seen it before now. Definitely for sure him.
I have confirmation that it is him.
Okay. So I sleuthed it out before he, it took me a bit.
I have confirmed that he is indeed putting the L in Diesel.
At least he didn't pull his bracket. That was a concern. But there again, Cole and I, we both put our names on our bracket.
So did I.
No, you've got
Baldo or Rob Brown.
Yeah, so people looking for Rob Brown are going to go, yeah, that's probably someone just used that. Because there's also Lonzo as a Swiftie. I mean, people have used our names. So I don't know for sure that Baldo or Brown is actually your
It absolutely
thing.
is mine.
Okay.
Why would I lie about that?
Because there are other Rob Browns.
If I was gonna pick a bracket to say it was me, I wouldn't go T26.
Well,
I'd pick something like T5 to look respectable. I'd say I'm like ESPN fan 09959438330'S. That number is. There's a.
couple of different things. I don't know if I would go with Dolph Ziggler. Maybe the Bronx Bomber or someone like that.
Wrapping up. No, we're not. What am I talking about? I got to hold on a segment.
Yeah, and we need to come back and confirm what I was able to see.
Yes, we do.
Because, I don't need to rescind it. We never said that he pulled it. I said he probably changed his name, and I was concerned because I wouldn't think that he would do that. So,
we have confirmed. I reached out to Diesel during the break and asked him just straight up, did you change your bracket's name? And Diesel has confirmed that, yes, indeed, his bracket is now named Putting the L in Diesel. In fact, when I texted him, I said, did you change your bracket name? He said, yeah, Putting the L in Diesel, scroll all the way to the bottom.
So
he knows.
So before this was on stream, so some of you didn't hear it, but I said, I think this is it before Rob texted him. I want credit for being Batman, okay? I'm wearing a Batman shirt. I sleuthed it out. World's greatest detective. I figured it out before you got confirmation.
Diesel burned himself, as you heard, hysterically, perfectly timed sports flash from Diesel there. Burned himself by selecting Louisville to make a run all the way to the national champion. No, excuse me, to the Final Four before being defeated by Florida to make their way into the championship game. Diesel's natty pick is still alive. So he is he's probably not in contention to win this thing because there's a bazillion people who picked Florida overall. He could still have a very respectable finish. If Florida wins it, there is honestly still a chance that he could theoretically
finish ahead of Lonzo and I because he does still have Duke and Florida in the Natty. I do not have Florida in the Natty. I have Auburn up there. He has Florida and Maryland both still alive down there. Texas Tech, and he did pick St. John, so he's in a little trouble down there. But he did pick Florida, so that side of the bracket's not busted. He has Tennessee over Houston in the Elite Eight. In that portion, he's good there. He has Duke over Alabama. He's good there. There's really only one spot he's in trouble, which is he had Louisville over Michigan State in the Elite Eight up in the South bracket. So he does still have 3 of his Final 4 still alive. If all 3 hit, he could be in good shape. The problem is that we have 2 of the same Final 4, meaning he would need both of the other 2 to get there to be able to catch. But we can now confirm that Diesel has changed his bracket name to putting the L in Diesel, which has located him on page 4 of 5.
He's tied for 99.
That is correct. T99. So still a lot of still a lot of basketball left to be played. And for the record, he's at 420 points, which in that group overall, 420. Nice. Wow. Has you, let's see, I'm currently at 480. So it was only 60 points off the pace. In the Final 4, that's 1 game. Or excuse me, that's 2 games. So he's still very alive.
But if you average the two scores together from the 2 shows, I'd say we're ahead.
Let's see. Buckeye Mike has texted the show and said, I added TRBS to my bracket to counter him. Give me my captaincy. Buckeye Mike, I will tell you, you have been here. You have contributed.
Hey, you're always the captain of my heart.
Captaincy awarded, if only for making Lonzo feel like he's not alone. Not alone. Kane put in the Facebook chat, Brian, I can't believe you would turn on the Armada like that, and you were a captain. Emphasis on the were. Kane, I am saying captaincy temporarily rescinded for the turncoat Brian.
Okay, so you're rescinding temporarily. How did you get it back?
I don't know yet. That's up for him to find out.
He can't change the name back now, though.
Oh, no.
Because we all see it.
No,
so,
we've all seen it. He could change the name to just TRBS, but here's what I do know. What I do know is on the front page of the bracket. In fact, I'm looking through all of the picks right now. I think, and I could be wrong, I'm scrolling through every page. I think he is one of 2. It looks like there were 2 people who selected Michigan State to win the Natty. Sorry, 3 people to select Michigan State to win the Natty. The only one on the top page. So we know who he is, and he just has to listen. He made a choice, and I understand. Sometimes you got to look out for number 1. Sometimes you got to do what's best for you. Sometimes you got to make a decision that even though everybody around you says that's not it, you're not helping the group here. Hey, you got to do what's best for number 1. I understand. Looking out for me. I get it. Just know. That's some mega heel stuff right there. Captaincy rescinded. Okay? It's up to you to figure out if you can earn it back. That's all I'll say. All right. Let's get to some more stuff here on the radio program. I've been carrying this clip for a minute. Now feels like as good a time as any to bring it up. Earlier in the show, I was talking about the fact that the Southeastern Conference just had perhaps the best individual year that any individual conference has had in any individual sports. I think that this year in basketball was a better year for the SEC than even some of the best SEC years in football. Even the year where Alabama and LSU rematched for a national championship game. I think it was better than that. I think this year's SEC basketball year was the best conference year in any individual sport I've ever seen. That conference was dominant. And the numbers have held up. They got 14 teams into the field of 68. They got 13 teams into the field of 64. They now have 7 teams in the Sweet 16. All of those numbers have set records. In fact, the 7 teams in the Sweet 16 knocks off the 6 teams that the ACC had back in 2022. The 14 teams in the field of 68, I'll even give you 13 teams in the field of 64, is the highest number, surpassing the 11 teams that the Big East put into play back in, I believe, 2016. This conference is very good. And we had a conversation about the fact that there's a reason behind it to me. There are 3 C's in recruiting: cash, culture, and coaching. Guys sign up to play for one of those 3 things. We'd be foolish to say that cash isn't a major influence. Of course it is. Just like all of us out here in the real world, if somebody offers you pay twice as much to go do the same job somewhere else, most of us are going to take it. Culture matters to most of us. I think a lot of us, I certainly have, a lot of us have given up a job that we maybe made a little bit more money to go work at a place that we, hated less. That's culture. But then there's coaching. And the reason coaching is important is because coaching, to me, sets the standard for those other things. A head coach builds the culture of any given program. If a kid wants to go play in the culture of a program, that culture is usually built and orchestrated by the head coach. If there's a bunch of cash on the line, bunch of NIL money out there that entices a player to come play for that program, likely it's there because the head coach has a wonderful relationship with the fans and the boosters, and they go, yeah, I believe in what's happening here. Here's bunches of money. And then they can kind of figure out how to distribute that in a way to get the best possible players into that program. I think the head coach is the most important C. Spring football is fired up around the Southeast, including over in Columbia, South Carolina, where Shane Beamer has begun to reemerge into the public spotlight. He gave a press conference last week, and he said about the culture of South Carolina football this.
And if you get an opportunity to go play in the NFL, that's going to, be a lot more than you ever make from a NIL standpoint while you're in college. So just making sure that you're making the best decisions for the next, 10, 15 years of your career, and not so much what you can get for the next 6 months or year as well. And, we got guys that starts in recruiting, bringing the right guys into our program. And then when they get here, being who we say we are as a program and treating them the right way and realizing, what they told me in recruiting is exactly what's happening here when they get in our program. Because I think that's when you get in trouble, is when, you tell a guy something in recruiting and then they get into your program and they realize that's not quite what I thought it was going to be, and that's not quite what you told me. That doesn't happen here, and it goes back to, trust and the way we treat our guys.
That. Remember when NIL and the portal started and all the coaches came out and they said, we hate this. I jumped on this mic and I said, there's a reason why they hate it. Why they hate it is because they can't lie to players anymore. They can't tell a kid, yeah, you'll be a starter, and then they show up and they're not a starter anymore. Those kids can't do anything about it. They're locked in, right? And now they can. Now they can go, screw this. You told me this and I'm out. You told me I was going to make this much money. I was going to get this much playing time. I was going to be in this role on the team, and I'm not that, so I am out. That's why they hate it. Shane Beamer just hit on what it takes to be a successful head coach. It is to properly and correctly and accurately and truthfully tell players what the program is, what their role is inside of it, and then make them feel as if you have lived up to that. And if you do that, you can build a great culture and you can be successful. I buy into what Shane-O, friend of the show, Shane-O Beamer, had to say. I thought that's a great soundbite. Wrapping up the show next on The Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
John Cena posted, when we understand that we are good enough as we are and we are worthy of love, the power that anyone thinks they have to change that perspective exists only because of our allowance. He's going to be a babyface before he's done, and he won't change anything. And I am rooting for him to win at WrestleMania so Ric Flair can go away.
It's not. Kane took it to the ultimate level. It's not that serious.
Listen, it's an armada. That a plank would have to be extended. So this is a walking the plank thing. It's not. I mean, you know.
You know what the punishment I learned about? And this was more of a pirate thing than a military thing. But you ever heard the term keel hauling?
Yes.
There is a show on HBO, if you're into historical pieces, called Black Sails. Black Sails is my favorite pirate thing ever. It's my favorite pirate thing ever. I freaking love it. I've watched it 3 times.
Was Blackbeard on Black Sails? Was that
Blackbeard was in that show.
Was that accurate?
Yes and no.
When they took the young pirate to meet Blackbeard?
Yes
was
and
that
no.
accurate?
Oh, that was not actually Blackbeard in that scene.
Okay,
But there is a Blackbeard, and it is Blackbeard.
Happened to go, check this out.
No, so
wait a minute.
That scene was a hazing ritual for a new sailor.
Uh-huh.
There is a Blackbeard,
But
and
apparently
he's a
historically accurate.
badass in that show.
Historically accurate.
The Blackbeard in the show is it's Blackbeard. Like, smoking the beard and everything.
Uh-huh.
That scene was someone pretending to be Blackbeard to scare a new pirate into a hazing ritual.
Didn't scare it. It was a female, and
Right. It was because he thought he was going to see the real Blackbeard. It turned out it was a hooker.
It's historically accurate.
Yeah. Let's take a quick listen to. We talked about Dan Hurley. I'm gonna hit a couple of different things before we wrap up the show with the little what the X is going on. I want to play you a couple of clips from a couple of other coaches because we were talking earlier in the show. The reason that I kind of started down this path, I maybe didn't get to the exact point, but the reason that, in my ever so humble yet frequently correct opinion, the reason that the SEC had the year it had in basketball right now is because I believe they have built a roster of coaches that is unheard of in the history of college basketball. It used to be back in the day that, like, the Big East was stacked with coaches like this. The ACC was stacked with coaches like this. It is not the case anymore. There are very good coaches in the Big East. There are very, very good coaches in the Atlantic Coast Conference. There's very good coaches in the Big Ten. But the roster of coaches in the SEC is unrivaled and unmatched in the history of conference basketball, in my opinion. And it's not just because the SEC has 1,000 teams in it. It's because the coaches at the top of that conference are genuinely very good. Nate Oates at Alabama. Rick Barnes at Tennessee. John Calipari at Arkansas. Chris Beard at Ole Miss. Todd Golden at Miami. At Florida, not Miami. At Florida. Great coaches all around. And to me, the reason the SEC is as dominant as it is this year is because the coaches in the conference are coaches that the top talent in America want to go play for. Years ago, the University of Alabama was a football school. Basketball was like something to engage in, be entertained by in the few weeks between the end of the college football season and spring football starting up. Now, it's a destination. Coleman Coliseum is sold out for every Alabama home game. That was unheard of a couple of years ago when I was covering Alabama down in the Florida Panhandle. Unheard of. Now, they're a basketball school. Auburn, same situation. Handful of years ago, Auburn was a football school. They had one goal and one goal every year. Beat the hell out of Alabama on the football field. That was it. Gridiron, baby. Now, Bruce Pearl showed up. Auburn said to the world, we are serious about basketball. They go get Bruce Pearl. He has built a culture there at Auburn that kids want to go play for. Same at the University of Florida. They had a couple of years after Billy Donovan split that they just weren't there. Now they got a guy who's built the culture kids want to play for. John Cal at Arkansas is giving a double bird to the world at Arkansas. He's got that team, a 10 seed in the Sweet 16. Chris Beard at Ole Miss got a second chance. Had some issues at Texas. They let him go. Ole Miss said, we know it's going to bring us under a little fire, give us a little heat, but we are serious about winning basketball. They went and they got Chris Beard. Mark Pope at Kentucky is also in the Sweet 16. Taking on Rick Barnes in Tennessee, as a matter of fact. Mark Pope is one of those guys. Kentucky found themselves in their round of 32 matchup. They found themselves in an absolute grinder of a game. Kentucky found themselves up against Illinois, and it was a game, again, a 6 seed, a good Illinois team. Good Illinois team. But not great. And they found themselves in a bit of a meat grinder. And after the game was over, Mark Pope got in front of the mic and he said this.
Possible fatigue with all the injuries, with everybody out, play a role in that. Not just physical fatigue, but mental fatigue, especially down the stretch when you're playing in different positions. And
Yeah, we're not leaving any space for that. Like, I have a good team. Like, the guys on the court are good players, and we're good enough to win. And these guys have proven that. We just didn't do it in the last 3 minutes and 45 seconds tonight. That's just it. It was tonight, and it's super painful. It's not acceptable. All those things are true. But we have the guys we need to win, and we're going to figure out a way to do it. And we did it for 36 minutes. We just couldn't do it for the last 4. That's just the truth. That's just the fact, and we'll lean into the facts right now.
So that was actually from the end of the SEC tournament run that Kentucky went on. Of course, they went into the SEC tournament with very high hopes, did the Kentucky Wildcats, but they took not just a loss against Alabama, but a 99-70 beatdown at the hands of Alabama. Bama just ran away from them late, right? And that was the commentary of Mark Pope. There's a lot of people that's what they want out of their head coach. There's a lot of people that's what they are looking for. John Calipari talking about his guys after Arkansas knocked off St. John's in a big upset.
These kids, I'm so proud of them, how they play and fight and persevered. They threw us in the coffin. They just forgot the nails. We pushed it open and we come out.
They threw us in the coffin. They just forgot the nails, so we pushed it open and came out. The Undertaker imagery. Phenomenal. Like that, again, if you're looking for upbeat type coaching, John Cal is doing it in Arkansas. That type of guy, like Mark Pope at Kentucky. Kentucky was floundering for a little. All of a sudden, Kentucky looks like they're world beaters again. Arkansas, when I was down in Florida covering basketball, Arkansas was just the team that the teams in the SEC went and beat the hell out of a couple of times a year to tune up for the rest of conference play. But here's John Cal building that conference. It's unbelievable. Let me give you one more clip. Kevin Willard is the head coach at the University of Maryland. Maryland is still very alive in this tournament as well after Derek Queen hit a buzzer beater March Magic miracle against Colorado State. They win 72-71, walk them off with a buzzer beater. They are squaring off with the University of Florida in the Sweet 16. Kevin Willard, a handful of days ago, was asked by a member of the Maryland media, hey, Kev, things are going great. People are starting to fear the turtle on the hardwood, but you have not signed an extension. Are you leaving? Is something wrong? And Kevin Willard gave this answer.
So I have to make a fundamental change where I can do the things that I want to do with my program. I wanted to spend an extra night in New York this year to celebrate Christmas with my team, and I was told that we can't do that because it's too expensive. So I don't know how we can be a top-tier program and I can't spend one extra night in New York because it's too expensive. So there's fundamental things I'm fighting for my team and my program. It's not so much about me. it seems I want to make sure that whatever we do going forward, we're successful, and we're successful at the highest rate.
So Kevin Willard says, I wanted to spend an extra day in New York City to celebrate Christmas with my team when we were over there, and the school said no. No, if we're breaking this down from a logical standpoint, if we're breaking this down from a standpoint of critical thinking, you'll arrive at a couple of places. Number one, budgets aren't unlimited. I want a Ferrari, Kev, but I can't afford it. My wife and I go to New York once a year or so. We love New York City. We fly up. We go to a Broadway play. We hit a couple of restaurants. We both got dear friends there. We hang out with them. We see the sights. We hear the sounds, et cetera, et cetera. And regularly, we have to go, okay, we can spend 3 days there, but we can't spend 7 because we can't afford it. That's a budget. And that's how the real world works. And Maryland ain't Ohio State. They ain't Penn State. They ain't Florida. They ain't Georgia. They don't have unlimited money like it feels like those schools do. So on one hand, it absolutely makes sense that the school would say, Coach, we can't afford 45 extra hotel rooms and leave you there through Christmas when those rates are elevated, and we got to fly you back. It's not in the budget, man. We can't do that. So you got to come back. But all that's irrelevant because what Kevin Willard just said to the parents, honestly, of future recruits is, I care about the guys. I want that sense of togetherness. I want that sense of community, that sense of team. I want my guys together on Christmas when we're out of town. I want to be able to give them special experiences like New York City at Christmas time, a wonderful experience if you've never been there. It's beautiful in the Big Apple around Christmas time. All of the reasons that Maryland would say, no, Coach, you cannot keep your entire basketball operation in New York City for an extra day just so you can see the Rockefeller tree. It all makes sense why they would say no. That doesn't matter. What Kevin Willard just said is, I'm not accepting more money. Even if this is dumb and doesn't make sense, because here's the thing. Kevin Willard could say, tell you what, Maryland, I'll take $100,000 less money on my contract. $100K less money if you will put that money towards promising me that next year when we go to New York City, we can all spend Christmas there or whatever. We go to Hawaii, you'll give us an extra day. Kevin Willard could just say, I'll take less money to do what is special for this basketball team. But he's not going to do that. Instead, what he does is he effectively, and this might backfire on him. Maryland might go, you know what, bro? You made us look bad. Screw you, GTFO. We don't need you here anymore. Or he might go talk to the parents of a handful of 3 and 4 and 5-star basketball players that go, you know what, Coach, we heard what you said, and we heard how important team building and community and special experiences are, and we get 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 years out of this experience. I want a coach who fights for me to get to do cool things and have cool experiences and do so with a team. I'll come play for you. And all of a sudden, look at Maryland basketball in the Sweet 16, moving on up. It's impressive. A coach who builds a great culture, even if he's got to lie to do it, like Kevin Willard did, or doesn't lie to do it, is the most important thing that any program, football, basketball, baseball, or otherwise, at the collegiate level can possibly have.
And now, the Rob Brown Show presents Twitter.
All right, time to find out what the X is going on. I will tell Rob, or ask Rob what the X is going on, and he'll tell everybody why this is trending. The first thing is South Carolina Gamecocks.
It is trending because the women's basketball team is, and I've done the research on this, Lonzo, good at basketball.
Yes, very good game yesterday. Chloe Kitts got into foul trouble early on in the first half, but got back in the second half. Tina Pow, my favorite player, was awesome yesterday.
And 5 of 13 from 3, shot a few less threes, made a few less threes than we're ordinarily used to. 11 of 16 from the free throw stripe. Got to clean that up a little bit. But here's the thing. The Hoosiers, 64-53 the Gamecocks won, by the way.
They were losing for a bit.
Yeah, they were trailing at the half, as a matter of fact, by 1. They sent the Hoosiers to the stripe, Lonzo. Indiana had 6 free throw attempts in the game. That is something that has been cleaned up dramatically, because going back before the SEC tournament, they were sending teams to the stripe like 17, 18, 20 times at a game, just 6, and that was a big difference.
It was a very good game. The next thing that's Xing is STDs.
I mean, much like STDs themselves, I have no idea because I don't have them.
Okay, well, is
it National STD Day?
No, there's a big story.
Okay.
This guy, employees recorded him because suddenly a bunch of them got STDs, and he was peeing in all their water bottles.
Ooh.
Yeah. So,
I suspect that guy's going to go to jail for a very long time.
And there's video evidence that he did it. And I did not read enough to find out what actual STD they caught, but still, it's not.
Not ideal.
It's not. The next thing that's Xing is Denzel Washington.
Ooh, it's Denzel's 57th birthday.
No, apparently, Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal are starring in the play Othello, and last night a ton of celebrities showed up, including Joe Biden. Who
Wait.
Who looked strangely coherent. It was weird.
Okay, y'all. First off, you're gonna start with that. It's old. He's not president anymore. We can stop.
Right. Well, he's. I'm just saying. Being out of the office looks good for him. That's all. There's a lot of pressure in that office, apparently.
Second off, I will watch the hell out of that. Can I tell you, if you haven't watched it, Training Day is one of the greatest movies ever made, and Denzel's an absolute stud.
Well, this
in that
is
movie.
Broadway. So
no, I know.
And
if I was in the city, I can go ahead and promise you right this second, 100% I'm buying a ticket to go see that. One of my favorite Shakespeare plays.
With that many celebrities there, you might not be able to find one.
That is also true. I'm looking right now at some of there were a lot of them yesterday.
Lines of limos. Yes, a ton of people there. Yeah. The next thing that's Xing is Joe Hendry.
Joe Hendry is Xing because I believe. The thought here, as Jey Uso has a tag team match tonight in, I believe they're in Scotland tonight. Is that correct?
I believe they are.
I also believe in Joe Hendry.
Actually, it's today. Remember, we can watch this during the day.
That's right. They're in Scotland, and Jey Uso has a mystery partner announced in his tag team match today against A-Town Down Under. And the hope of the international wrestling community is that Jey Uso is going to shock the world and make his tag team partner in this contest today/tonight on Monday Night Raw the man that we all believe in, Joe Hendry.
Well, there's another guy from Scotland there, but I don't believe he will be his partner.
McIntyre.
Yes. And finally, the last thing that's Xing is Egos.
I'd be down if it was true, too. Is what now?
Egos.
Egos like Lego my Egos?
Lego my Egos.
I have no idea why Legos are. I'm just going to say they're still delightful. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, Egos are amazing. I don't know why either. I looked everywhere, but they're Xing right now. And,
so it's going to be one of those things that they're trending just because somebody said it, and then everybody's like, "Oh, that's right, Egos are awesome." Lego my Egos.
Apparently,
I'm a big fan. Hey, that's it for us. Have a lovely rest of your day. Don't drink and drive. I will punch you in the face. We will be back tomorrow. We got a break from college basketball until Thursday. Okay, so tomorrow we dive into some spring football. We're one day closer to Major League Baseball. We'll break down the Bravos and more. Have a lovely rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Later.
I look great, but I'd rather be fat and happy, lad.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, what did he say? What that cut it just played? What did he say?
He said, "I look great, but I'd rather be fat and happy, love."
Okay.
That's your boy Patty.
Patty, I knew who it was.
Yeah. That was so they were. In
I wasn't expecting it, so I didn't listen as closely as I. Yeah.
At the press conference after his last fight, they were asking him about his. He blows up. He gains 50 pounds after every fight, and at the press conference immediately after the fight, he's at the podium and he's just pounding slices of pizza like he's sponsored by Papa John's.
And they're like, hey, dude, like, why do you blow up? Doesn't it make it harder to get back in fat shape or into fight shape? Fat shape. Yes, that. Into fight shape. And he goes, yeah. He goes, but honestly, I love food. I look great, but I'd rather be fat and happy. And I've never resonated with a professional athlete so much. All right, dudes and dudettes, thanks for being here. You're all spectacular people. Have a lovely rest of your day. Tell your friends about us. We're trying to get famous. We'll see you back here tomorrow. My mic's way over there, so I hope you can hear me. Goodbye.